Good evening. Noting the time and the presence of a quorum, I'd like to call this June 16th, 2025 meeting of the Acton Select Board and Sewer Commissioners to order. We're going to be jumping around the normal agenda a little bit while we await our colleague. So I would like to start out with a chair update, town manager update, and members minute. A couple of items that I would like to bring to folks' attentions. On Monday, June 23rd, the next in our speaker series, the Acton 250 Committee, will be having speaker at the Acton Memorial Library instead of here in the Faulkner Room. That's at 7 p.m. And Mass Department of Transportation is hosting a meeting on Wednesday, June 25th, starting at 7 p.m. here in the Faulkner Room. It will also be available virtually to talk about proposed traffic changes at the intersection of Route 2 and Taylor Road. Mr. Manager.
I defer.
Good evening, everyone. Two events to announce. One is coming up this Sunday. It is the Asian Music Festival. It'll be hosted at Nara Park from 5 to 8 p.m. and it'll have a few acts there. And it's hosted by the New Moon International Media and the Acton Chinese American Civic Society. Another big event that we have coming up at Nara Park is the July 4th celebration. It'll be hosted Friday, of course, July 4th. The gate will open at 5 p.m. Shuttle buses will begin along Nagog Park Drive from 5 to 7:30. There'll be a pause in shuttle buses from 7:30 until after fireworks, which is just about 9:50-ish. And then we'll be running shuttle buses again from 9:50 until about 11 o'clock. There'll be a number of food vendors there. Food truck vendors will also have a performance by 36 Red. They are Robert Kraft's favorite in-house band, so we were able to get them for the concert. Again, it'll start at 5 p.m., and we hope to see you all at Nara Park on the 4th. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Comments from members? David.
Good evening. I have a handful of things. First of all, the school district has begun their strategic planning process, and part of that is a community forward survey. And I would encourage anybody who's interested to fill out the community forward survey. You can find that at abschools.org. On Thursday, on Juneteenth, Thursday, when town offices are closed, a group of folks and sponsored by the DEIC are having a Juneteenth commemoration. It'll begin at the Congregational Church and walk around this area and have several stops in this area, I should say. You can RSVP to this. There's a link in the news item in the town's webpage. On Friday, the 20th, there's going to be a drag show at Nara Park that you can find a link to get more information at actonrec.com. And finally, on Saturday in the afternoon, there's a Pride Festival also at Nara Park. That's family friendly. There are booths and activities and things like that. You can find information about that also on the actonrec.com website. Thank you.
Melissa.
Thank you. I just wanted to give one last reminder that Household Hazardous Waste Day is this Saturday, June 21st from 9 to 11:30 at 14 Forest Road at the DPW facility, and this is the only hazardous waste day that the town will be hosting this year. The Water Resources Advisory Committee is conducting a survey that's available on the town website. You can either follow the news flash about the survey to the link, or go to the Public Works Stormwater Management Program page to find the link to the survey. And the RAC is hoping for public input on stormwater funding options. And this last thing that I have is an item that could not be reasonably anticipated by the chair, because I was notified in an email today from the Mass Municipal Association. They sent an email announcing that they had sent a letter to the Budget Conference Committee advocating mostly for, but also against provisions in the fiscal year 26 budget that's now being reconciled. So they have 3 representatives from the House, 3 representatives from the Senate. The deadline is June 30th, and since this board is not meeting again until July 7th, I was wondering if you'd be interested in sending a letter on behalf of the Select Board, just echoing their recommendations. And I wrote down a list of them if you're interested in that. Alternatively, I can send it from just me, but I think it might be more impactful if it was coming from the entire board.
Well, not having read the letter, and I don't think other members of the board have read the letter either, I don't think it's appropriate to try to send something right now. So
Do you want me to list the items that they're in support of? And potentially we could do a 5-minute Zoom meeting between now and June 30th to approve it? Or shall I just send one on my own?
look for any guidance from the town manager.
You know, here, having your legislators hear from multiple people sometimes has a greater impact than one. So I actually reached out, just in my role as a town official this morning, to our 2 state reps, and I recommend that is an action that each of you could take. And I think that could be, in addition to the board taking a position, writing a letter on its own, or it could be an alternative to that. I'm not sure if that was helpful or not, but.
So yes, that's helpful information. And I guess that makes me think that it would be a great opportunity to educate the public on what these items are, because maybe some members of the public who are listening would also be interested in writing to their legislators to push for these. The Mass Municipal Association is encouraging the committee to include in its reconciliation all of the unrestricted government aid, or also known as UGA. It's an increase. Full funding of the special education circuit breaker, charter school mitigation payments, and regional school district and McKinney-Vento student transportation, fully funding that so that we, AB can get our full reimbursement. Distribution of pilot funds to municipalities with state-owned land, liquor licensing reform, studying the Chapter 70 formula, transferring surplus funds to disaster relief and resiliency. And the one thing that they are, the Mass Municipal Association is opposed to is Section 110, which would jeopardize financial relief for ambulance services. And MMA is actually partnering with Fire Chiefs of Massachusetts, Pro Firefighters of Massachusetts, and Massachusetts Ambulance Association on that particular issue. So I would encourage board members and any members of the public to write to their legislators supporting that. You can go to the MMA website to find the template, or actually not the template, the letter, for more details. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just a quick, timing might be a little off, Mr. Chair. I wanted to talk about sending a letter to the governor and the attorney general, and possibly join in some area towns in some sort of proclamation on the 4th of July, denouncing the activities of the federal government as far as ICE and what's happening. And I know that Stowe has a proclamation that they're planning on, proclaiming on the 4th of July. So our timing might be a little off, but I was hoping to have a letter from the Acton Select Board and a proclamation of our own.
Well, again, we haven't seen the letter, we haven't seen the proclamation. Anything like this, I think, should be brought up at a regular select board meeting with proper notice in an agenda so that members of the public can weigh in one way or another. I would certainly support you taking the opportunity to write something on your own, but I don't see how we can possibly deal with that between now and the 4th of July. If you'd like to suggest an agenda item for our next regularly scheduled meeting in July, we can certainly talk about that.
And I do have a completed letter and proclamation. It's set to go, so.
Thank you. All right, moving along. It was suggested that because it's unusual for us to start our meetings at 6 p.m., although hopefully this will be the new norm, I'm going to hold off on soliciting resident concerns until 7 p.m., so we make sure that we don't miss anybody. So moving ahead, let's take the consent agenda. I'll read through the list. Item 20, approve board and committee reappointments as listed. Item 21, approve updated traffic calming policy.
Hold.
22, approve appointment of Corey Godfrey as representative from the Acton Water District to the Water Resources Advisory Committee. 23, accept a gift for $250 from Bursar Gas and Oil Incorporated to support the 2025 Summer Concert Series and special events. Number 24, accept a gift for $500 from Tables to Teapots to support the 2025 Summer Concert Series and special events. 25 was removed from the agenda earlier today. Item 26, approved meeting minutes, June 2nd, 2025.
Hold.
Accept a motion to approve consent items 20, 22, 23, 24.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Back to consent item 21. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't realize that this was coming back as a consent item, and there are a couple of things that they're pretty small, but I think they're important things, changes that I would like to see to the policy before we adopt it. I could list them now if you wanted to try to adopt them now, or this could come back as a regular agenda item, or however you would like to do it. Again, they're pretty small, and I'm happy to say what they are, and we could adopt it as amended, or whatever you'd like to do.
Yeah, why don't you let us know what you have in mind?
Okay, there are two things. One is, the policy has the speed collection signs as one of the remediation steps. It's like step 5 or 6 in the process. But in reality, two things about that. One is the data collection in those is usually vital at the very beginning, almost like a step 0. Because knowing, the amount of traffic and the 85th percentile speed is important to input to the process and really needs to be done up front. And also, it's practice that the people can contact the manager's office or the police department and ask to have one of these signs if they put it on their street if they think that there's a problem. The town manager reminded me that, that can continue to happen, but that's not what this policy says, and I'm concerned about what's written down, and that people, because it says one thing, people may not know that there's another way, and like I said, I think that information is adopted. So my first change would be to move that out as a remediation step and move it up to the beginning of the process. And the second thing is, if in many cases for traffic problems, a board member is involved in calling attention to the process, often because a constituent contacts us. And I would like the policy to say that if a board member is the one that brings the neighborhood problem forward, either with a constituent or on the behalf of a constituent, the board member is involved in that particular process on an ongoing basis. Because often, at least it's my experience, that, I would want to let the constituent know what progress is being made and why the decisions were made the way they were. So those two things, move the signs up front as a data collection mechanism, and if a board member is the one that brings it forward, have the board member involved in the process until that request is resolved.
Comments from other members? Alyssa?
Thank you. So, David, the data collection, are you suggesting that the speed trailers be deployed at the initial complaint? Or are you just talking about the feedback signs that are moved around town?
So I think maybe the manager can confirm, I think that when it says speed trailers, it actually meant both. They do exactly the same things, they're just a different footprint. They both record the speeds and echo back the speed. So they do exactly the same, except that the trailers take up more room. It's just a difference in technology, the trailers are older. So they do the same thing, and that data collection is important, and also that's a very quick step. It's very responsive to folks. They can often be put up within days. So if people are having a problem, it's extremely responsive. Whereas this process is a many weeks process, right? So I like the fact that it's quite responsive, and we then know if people are saying, people are going by at 60 miles an hour in front of my house. We have the data then after that as to what the 85th percentile speed is and that kind of thing.
Is that data stored on those feedback signs? I didn't think it was.
We have several technologies in place. One is we've hung up brackets on several street poles throughout the community where we'll rotate through these mobile radar feedback signs. There is technology in those things that collects data about how fast the car is traveling and what time it is, and maybe something else. And that data is stored in that device until we take it off. And then it has been used to understand traffic impacts, but it's not a traffic study. It's just sort of it's something that we look at to help us inform what we're concerned about. And the trailers, I believe, have a similar technology, although it's not the same one.
Go ahead.
So I guess I would, thank you, I didn't know that. I thought they just gave feedback. I guess I would be in favor of keeping the language as is because there's a minimum criteria that needs to be met in order for the town to deploy any data collection technology. And if it's moved to the very beginning, then it's going to be confusing if people expect that to be deployed right away, without having met this minimum criteria. And I don't think that we would stop using those, rotating them around when they are requested as we do currently. And the second, I don't remember.
Board members involved. Board members should stay involved.
Okay. I would also just want residents to be able to interface with staff without needing having an expectation that select board members would be the gatekeepers.
David?
So I would never say that, I or any one of us should be a gatekeeper, but I do want to know so that I can proactively get back to them. If they want to ask the DPW or this group about the progress, that's completely fine. But also, I want to be able to proactively get back to them, or if they ask me, I want to be informed. So if they say, has there been any progress? I can say, yes, there have been 2 meetings, or no, there hasn't been any meetings, or whatever the case is. I also want to say that the case today is that someone in town can request one of these signs or a trailer from the police department. That's exactly what I don't want, is this indicates that that's not the case, right? This indicates, like, you have to meet a certain minimum criteria to get a sign. And that is not the case, and people can call the police department. I don't like it written down in an incorrect fashion. That's, it should say the way it really is. And so, anyway, the policies that we issue as a board have a way of sticking and being, and people read them several years later and say, this is what they did 3 years ago. But that's not what we do now, right? And I don't want to take that ability away, right? I just had a resident contact me, and then they contacted the police department and asked to have a sign installed on Stowe Street, and the police did it in 2 days. And that's common. I mean, it's not really common, but if people have a problem, they can call the police department, and the police department responds.
John, what's your feeling about these suggested changes, considering you're going to have to deal with them?
Well, I think that this policy was presented to this board sometime in the last year after going to the Transportation Advisory Committee, and Corey York and Chin, town engineer, took that feedback, worked with the consultant, and then worked with the Transportation Advisory Committee again to incorporate that feedback into the revised policy. And then the TAC met and agreed upon that, which was been put before you tonight. I think if we're proposing to make some, I think these are substantial changes. I don't think they're not grammar or typos. I think they're pretty substantial changes. I think I'd want to hear that process went back through that process, because I think it changes the proposal, if to change the order of how things are being done and to change who's involved in them. So I think anything the board decides to do, will do, but I just think the reason that was on consent is that it was our understanding that the board had given input, the TAC was going to finalize it, and then we just bring it back and approve it. But this is new to me anyways.
Let's bring it back at a subsequent meeting. David, if you can submit your suggested changes in writing to the town manager, and then he can pass them off to TAC and the rest of the traffic management group. David?
I did do that earlier today, and I was away for the weekend. I got back and prepared for the meeting, and I did that earlier today. I can send them off to you, Mr. Chair, as a reminder to put them on an agenda. But I want to say that it is this body that issues the policies. The TAC is an advisory board. I completely respect their input, but they're not the decision makers. We're the decision makers. So I think it's important that if we're issuing the policy, the 5 of us, or a majority of the 5 of us, have to agree to that.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I don't like trying to change policies on the fly where we haven't all had the chance to read them and look at the larger context. So if we can, we'll plan on bringing that back in a month or two. Item 26 was a hold on.
Yes, I just wanted to draw your attention that I submitted an edit to the member minutes. It was Mr. Benson's comments. It had been referred, the Select Board had been referred as the body that Mr. Benson suggested sent the notice, and it was actually Town Council. So I sent that email to Lisa, and she made the change. And I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that before we voted to approve it.
Good, thank you.
I move to approve the meeting minutes of June 2nd, 2025 as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. All right, consent has been handed. Jim?
Apologies for being late. I won't go into the long story, but here I am. So I gather we have approved all the consent items, including the board and committee reappointments as listed, or did we skip over that?
Those were all approved.
Okay, because the document in here leaves some open questions that seem to need to be resolved by the liaisons about RAC and Board of Appeals and Cable Advisory Committee. So just wanted to note that.
Alyssa?
So with the RAC, I assume you mean the replacement of Matt Mostoller by Corey Godfrey? No.
No, let's see if I can get this right here. Two RAC members requested reappointment this year who have each served more than 2 terms. And there's a person named Richard Doherty who's applied to join the RAC in 2022, and the VCC recommended in favor of his appointment. So the Select Board, in particular the liaison, has the option of, in the case of people that have served more than 2 terms on a board or committee, to bring the idea forward that perhaps, a new person would be helpful in the turnover of committees. So at some point, that would be a wise thing to consider.
Okay, thank you. And you said something about cable advisory as well?
Yes, but this could be dealt with later. This was, Matt Petrosky applied to join the Cable Advisory Committee in 2022, and could be appointed, but we can do that at a subsequent meeting if we want. There is now a vacancy on that committee.
Okay, thank you. Alyssa, as our liaison to RAC, do you have any reaction to Jim's comments?
Yes, I do. First of all, I wonder if Richard Doherty has been contacted since he applied 3 years ago. Second of all, I think as a member who has only served 2 years, I am not as familiar with the number of terms committee members have served, so knowing that they've served 2 terms already would be helpful before today, before it comes to the board for approval. And then third, we do have an associate member, Dave Bakuti, so I think that even there I would, if we were replacing a member, I would promote an associate member before having somebody who applied 3 years ago come in. And I will also note that we are getting a new member in Corey Godfrey, who was just appointed tonight. So there is some freshness there.
Okay. Considering that all of the other appointments are going to expire at the end of this month, I'd loathe to hold this off. Unless you have a way around that, Jim.
That this has already been approved? No, I think, if we want to take a different action at our next meeting, we can do that. It's right here, this memo is not exactly a list of people to be appointed or reappointed. It's a list of people who are interested in being reappointed. So I think what we're saying is that if they are interested in reappointed, the intent of the vote on consent is that they become reappointed. The rest of the memo was the one that talked about the Cable Advisory Committee, the Board of Appeals, and the and RAC. So I had the notion that perhaps people had already read that when it first came out, and I did send it to the chair and to the manager and suggested that these issues should be resolved before we voted. But since I'm late, I can't really do anything about it except to suggest to the members who are the liaisons to those boards that they read the memo and decide if they want to make any, re-suggestions at our next meeting.
Thank you. John?
I would just say that if it's not crystal clear who the board just reappointed, then it should be something that is brought back to a next meeting with their specific names on the agenda and the appointment terms on the agenda, which I think is customary. So if there's any confusion about that, if we're uncertain now, 6 months from now, when we're looking back on it, we're going to be even more uncertain. So I'd rather do it again, if possible.
Okay, let's bring this one back at a subsequent meeting, and we'll have a chance to untie this knot. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, do you want a motion to undo the action we
Yes,
just did?
please.
Okay. I move to undo the action that in the consent that we did on item 20 and to bring that back as a future agenda item.
Second. Was I the person who seconded in the first place?
I don't. Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Okay, moved and seconded to retract our original vote on item 20 and bring it back at a subsequent meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Let's bring that one back. Thank you. Jim?
I'm happy to assist in coming up with suggested terms based on the spreadsheet of volunteers and to, distribute that via the manager to the board as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've got about a half hour before our posted public hearing, so let's jump back to the sewer commissioner's business. Item number 1, sewer rate setting.
Thank you, board members, or at the moment, sewer commissioners. Ellie Anderson, our budget manager, is going to provide a presentation on the rate-setting process, as she has done for the last few years. And with that information, we'd be asking the board to, or the commissioners, to set the rates for the upcoming year. And we will have time for questions as well. And Director Corey York is also here virtually to assist in the presentation as well.
Good afternoon, or good evening. As John said, my name is Ellie. I'm the budget manager, and I'm here to present recommended rates for sewer service for fiscal year 2026. As we all know, each year the Finance Department reviews the upcoming budget, the financials for the Sewer Enterprise Fund, and issues a recommendation regarding any rate changes for the upcoming fiscal year. And then as an additional reminder, we're kind of in the midst of using a methodology that was originally presented at the last Sewer Commissioners Workshop in September 2023. As shown on the slide, operating costs have increased. The difference between, it should say FY25 and FY26 budget is about $145,000, which comes out to a 13% operating cost increase. Given this increase, the methodology that was originally presented at that workshop, and the financial condition of the enterprise fund, we are recommending a 6.5% increase across all rate classes. So if this were to be approved, the residential rate would increase to 0.1721 per cubic foot, and the commercial and school rates would increase to 0.2428 per cubic foot. If we're translating that into dollars and cents and what that means as a monthly billing impact for customers, that comes out to $5.27 more per month for the average single-family residential customer, $19.11 more per month for the average commercial customer, and then $112.43 on the average school sewer bill. So why 6.5%? As discussed at that workshop, and then subsequently as we've approved rates, we're in the process of increasing revenue for the fund to prepare the Sewer Enterprise Fund to take on the cost of the debt service associated with the wastewater treatment facility rehabilitation project. Up until 2032, that cost is going to be borne by a different fund where sewer privilege fees are connected. So we kind of determined that the 6.5% is what's necessary to get the fund to that point. A couple of differences this year is that at the 2025 town meeting just last month, borrowing authorization was approved for the construction of a new equalization tank at the treatment facility. So this graph, this sensitivity analysis, does include the addition of that estimated debt service. With that debt service being estimated about coming online in fiscal year 2027. And as shown, that 6.5% increase still gets us to where we want to be in fiscal year 2032. Additionally, this rate structure reduces the reliance of the fund on retained earnings and ensures that we're reaching that reserve target that we had discussed of 50% in reserves. 50% of the annual operating budget in reserves. So that's all I have. I'm happy to take any questions you might have. And I also have a motion on the next slide when the time comes.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Jim.
Hi, Ellie. Can you go a little deeper into the factors that increased the budget by 13% this year?
So the biggest piece of this is the fact that we went out to bid this past spring for a new contract to operate the wastewater treatment facility. So some of that increase is actually contingency to kind of negotiate kind of the unknown of what might come out of that contract. The budget was approved before any contract was awarded. So that's the bulk of that operating increase.
Was it this year that we moved some personnel expenses and redistributed some of them to the Sewer Enterprise Fund?
You are correct. That is a lesser part of that increase. Part of my salary was actually apportioned into this enterprise fund and then the transfer station enterprise fund, which we'll be talking about at a later point in the evening. So you're right, that is a part of that increase.
Other questions? Alyssa?
Thanks, Ellie. I have two questions. Can you remind me the school dollar per month? Is that per building or for the entire district? And then my second question, can you tell me what happens in between FY '31 and FY '32 that brings our surplus back down to zero? What is the borrowing that goes into effect at that point in time?
So regarding the school billing question, it's purely just an average. So it's the flow, the sewer bills are issued in 3 different charge categories, that residential, commercial, and school. So it's the school's portion of the total monthly flow divided by the number of bills that we issue to the schools. So it's the school's accounts as a whole, but divided by the number of bills we issue, which I think is 5 or 6. So it's just an average. Regarding your second question, the reason why that surplus, that net position line drops is because in fiscal 2032, that's when this fund is taking on the cost of the rehab project debt service, which is around $250,000 a year. So the cost to operate is going to increase, resulting in a decrease in our net position or surplus.
Other questions? Jim?
I'm sorry that I don't remember the entire details of the, the last time we approved this financing system. But does this mean that the 6.5% is an estimate for future years' increases, or is this specific to this year?
So when we did that presentation a year and a half back, we were trying to standardize the rate setting process and kind of give a further outlook and predict what we might need to sustainably operate this system. And we had determined that if we do a 6.5% increase annually between, it would have been fiscal 25 until fiscal year 2032, then the fund is going to have enough in reserves to afford to take on an additional $250,000 in cost when we start paying that debt service out of this account and instead of out of the privilege fees, like was approved, I think, 2 Januaries ago. So that's kind of the number that makes that graph work.
Go ahead.
It's going to take me too long to start up my calculator, and you're much faster at this sort of thing. So 6.5% a year over the course of 6 years. That's going to make a pretty hefty increase over that period of time. Is anybody here capable of doing that in their head or with a calculator about how much we're increasing the water fees over the next few years?
I think at the time we had estimated that over that period, the monthly increase for residential customers would be between $5 and $8 more per month per year. Mm-hmm. So then we would I think we would extrapolate that out by the number of years that we're increasing by 6.5%, if that answers your question.
Almost. I'll play with my calculator.
Alyssa?
Thank you. All right, I have a couple more questions now. Do you know the annual amount average that we have been taking in privilege fees? And also, is there any impact to customers, ratepayers who are maybe using less water and so their bills are going down, which would produce less revenue?
I believe, I haven't rerun the numbers super recently, but at least at the time that we had done this analysis initially, so the number could be larger, we had collected about $2.1 million in privilege fees from the inception of the sewer system until right about now. And we had estimated the cost of charging the debt service to the fund that houses that revenue to be about $1.5 million. So that demonstrated that there's enough revenue in here to bore this cost, giving the enterprise fund time to prepare to take on that debt service payment. And then I might not have understood your second question correctly, but you're right. The sewer bills are based off of usage as reported by the water district. So if someone's using less water, then their sewer bill, their usage is down, but it depends on how much their usage is going down in comparison to how much the rate is increasing.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I want to confirm that we are not needing to count on any particular amount going forward from like until 32 in privilege fees. This is looking back at what we've collected in the past.
That's right.
Okay, great.
Yep.
And yes, that was my question, because at our house, our sewer bill has gone down because our water use has gone down. And I'm just wondering how widespread that is and if it's impacting our incoming revenue, if that is happening with a large percentage of ratepayers.
David?
I just wanted to say that two things. One, Jim, if you want to figure in just really rough numbers, so $6 per month per year or $36 per month for an average residential customer over 6 years. So that's definitely in the ballpark. And I think it's very appropriate, and that's why we were moving this way before, to save the privilege fee money for capacity expansion. And capacity expansion can be a number of different things, but I think since it's the privilege fees that pay for, new hookups that were not part of the original district, it makes sense not to expend that on replacing an old pump, and that's what we're doing with the program the borrowing program that we have in place that we're just beginning to pay for out of these fees. So I think this is a good plan, and we have 6 years actually to revisit it if it's getting too much money or too little money or whatever.
Fran?
I was going to move the motion. Move to approve the fiscal year 2026 sewer rates as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Jim?
It's about a 46% increase over the 6 years. So I just wanted to say that out loud because we knew this last year, that it was going to be an extraordinary increase. But it just brings it home to me. I'm going to approve this or abstain. I'm not sure which. I feel like I could ask questions all day and learn more and more, but I doubt the underlying vote would change. But I do feel underinformed.
David?
So just not, arguing or discussing, presenting a point of view, just to provide additional information. We could have saved and accumulated retained earnings in the enterprise fund since we started the sewer district to pay for pumps eventually wearing out. But I'll say two things about that, and that's true for anything that a municipality does. It is really difficult to save millions and millions of dollars and have taxpayers see, well, what are you using this for? Well, we haven't had any pumps fail yet, right? And so it's hard to accumulate that money, and we don't know exactly yet what's going to fail. It's much easier and straightforward to pay debt service. It's just a thing. It's really, you could definitely argue that we should have had higher rates all the way along, but it's difficult to figure out what those rates should have been. And we would have had, like I said, accumulated millions in retained earnings to not have to take out the loan.
All right, we've got a motion that's been seconded on the floor. All in favor of the motion to move to approve the FY 2026 sewer rates as presented? please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? They're approved. Thank you. Now, this is a great segue for item number 2, the sewer governance study. As Jim points out, he feels quite underinformed, and me too. Mr. Manager.
Thank you. So at the town meeting that occurred in 2023 or 2024, there was a citizen petition to asking voters whether they support the idea of looking at the governance of our sewer district and if there are alternative ways to do it that may serve the community better. That happened. The subsequent select board goal setting that occurred identified that as a goal for last year, I believe. And so we were able to hire the Collins Center, which is a quasi-government organization that operates out of UMass Boston that does a lot of local government work. We hired them to take a look at the issue of sewer governance and, municipal wastewater governance and identify best practices, looking at other communities that are similar to us and identifying some recommendations for what may be an ideal way to set up our sewer governance if we were to change it. And I think the report was published in the packet. I know I shared it with the board and the sewer commission earlier this spring, and we haven't really had a chance to discuss it. And I just wanted to make sure that it was in front of you and that I know that as part of the stakeholder engagement, the consultants interviewed each of you, I believe, and also other members of the community and other people involved in water and wastewater. And I think they did a pretty nice job. I think it basically lays out that there is another way that we could do this here, and it's just a matter of whether there's interest and will to pursue changes that they've recommended. So I'm happy to answer any questions or read those recommendations if you'd like me to do that, or however you want to proceed. I just wanted the sewer commissioners to have that opportunity tonight.
I think, John, I don't have the study in front of me right now, but they did come up with a recommendation for how they felt this should move forward. Can you read that recommendation?
Sure. So after a significant review of existing literature and case studies, the Collins Center team determined that there was an effective wastewater model that would best meet the towns of Acton, offering the most flexibility in decision-making, elevate technical expertise, and align with the town's values, would be an appointed wastewater commission, which would serve to assist the select board with wastewater governance matters. This select board appointed commission would maintain some autonomy and be empowered to make decisions of a more technical nature while making recommendations to the board for decisions that are broader in scope and have public policy implications that may impact other issues such as land use and development. So the recommendation was to establish an appointed commission that just focuses on the sewer, and if there's any big decisions, they would make a recommendation to the select board to be the ones to make those decisions.
Thank you. Comments and questions from the board? David?
So I think we could come up with something, but the details matter here, to me anyway. As far as money goes, there are kind of three classes of money, in my view. There's the rate setting, right? We could allow the commission to set the rates just like we just did. There's expenditures out of the enterprise fund, and they could approve, decide, actually it's town meeting that puts the rubber stamp on that. And the final thing is when we borrow and for what. To me, if you just lay those out in order, the the last one I said, to me, is the most important, that we maintain a little bit of control of the rate setting. Is maybe they could make those decisions, but you could argue that all three of those, obviously, Jim, this one, you had a pretty strong interest in the rate setting, right? And so we'd have to decide what money matters they had autonomy over, if any, and then what money matters we retained. And then there's the issue of policy, so I'm kind of assuming here, because this is what was said originally, is that this body would provide the technical expertise to decide, technical decisions on running the plant and, giving guidance or whatever to the operators of the plant and that kind of thing. And that I think, at least in the discussions we've had in the past and when we started this process, that seemed to be the thing that most of the members of the board were interested in, having this board too. And we just discussed money with the second thing. And the thing is policy, or what I would call policy. Things like, should privilege fees be waived for low-income units or not, right? And so we don't have a policy today. We have a de facto practice, but that is that's not related to the operation of the plant or anything. It's related to policy in town. And the other kind of thing that affects policy in my mind is whether we're going to say aim to sewer Lower Great Road or not, right? So policy things, I think, mostly belong with the board, because if we were making those decisions, we would definitely have hearings on them. We would, and we have the visibility to make a hearing on them. We might have other ways of gathering input from, feedback from towns, people in town. And so I think the policy things are important for us to retain. Anyway, I think I've covered all three of those, the technical operations, money at three levels, and policy.
Thank you. Alyssa?
I might not be as clear and concise as David, because I have a lot of swirling thoughts about this topic and everything that was written in the report. I guess I want to start off by saying that in terms of public engagement, I have a different opinion than David that if this was an independent body, distinct from the select board, there would be an opportunity for more public engagement, because the sewer commission business for the select board's Monday evening meetings comes up not on a very regular basis. We do the rate setting pretty much the same time every year, but if some small expansion, one parcel, or somebody comes and asks for, I want to build an ADU, so I need an additional bedroom. Those things can happen at any time over the year, and they're sort of not buried in the agenda, but nobody's anticipating them. So if there were a body that was meeting regularly, I think that would be easier for the public to access, because they would know they meet on the first Wednesday of the month in the evening, and they might sign up for a special email alert for that particular body. So I think that there's an opportunity for more transparency. It's also, I think the phrasing that the Collins Center report used was that an independent commission can serve as a platform for staff to engage with the public. So I think that that's really important to keep in mind. So that has to do with public engagement. I also note that some of the things that, David, you just mentioned about what should be handled by the commission versus retained by the select board is a little bit different than the bulleted list that they have at the end of the report. So the recommendation was for the select board to retain rate setting and borrowing authorization. And I don't think there was a distinction here with what you suggested, David, but endorsing plans for major expansion. And of course, we'd have to all decide, any interested party would have to decide what's major and what's minor. And then the commission, the Collins Center suggested that the commission develop policies and recommendations and authorize waiving fees and minor expansions. And also, on the recommendation of the DPW director, select the consulting engineer with, specific technical expertise that folks who would want to be on this commission would have, unique from the folks that generally run for select board. And that also establishes their independence from the board. A couple of other things that's stuck out at me is that in addition to potentially increasing public engagement, a sewer commission that was meeting regularly could keep tabs on, the operation of the treatment plant, but also changes to that. For instance, when the equalization tank comes online, that's going to change things. Keeping tabs on the progress that we're making with taking care of addressing inflow and infiltration issues. They might even be able to address the issue that was identified when the West Acton sewer expansion failed at town meeting in 2019, and we got an email about it actually earlier this afternoon, about the funding model of sewer and maybe changing that and shifting it away from only the bettered parcels to more of, or even the entire town, since there's a benefit to the entire town. Yeah, and I don't think this was in the report, but looking at, it might have been in the report because it's looking at Concord's model. They have a Public Works Commission, which deals with water in addition to wastewater. I do remember that the Public Works Director reported to their Public Works Commission that their treatment plant had been operating without any major upgrades for 40 years, and we needed some expensive upgrades after 20 years. And I'm not saying that there was anything amiss and, anything that we could have done differently to prevent that, but it would be nice to have more regular meetings in order to provide that oversight from folks who are wastewater professionals.
Thank you. I think what I'd like to get out of this is a feeling from my colleagues whether you are in favor of the overall thrust of the Collins Center report. And if so, what I would propose is that we develop a subset of either select board members or certainly town manager, DPW staff to come up with a charge and to kind of flesh out, answer a lot of the questions and look at specifically at some of the details that you and David have both raised, and then bring that back so that we can, we'll have a document to work off of, and just as we, have a charge for every other board and committee, do that here. So I guess the question is, my colleagues, are you favorably disposed towards the recommendation from the Collins Center? Jim?
Well, first of all, I really liked the report. I liked, one of the things that stood out for me right at the beginning was They really couldn't find any, general studies on what model of, wastewater management systems works the best. So the decision is more about, what in our particular town is going to create the best conditions for success, which they're defining, I think, reasonably as, strong public input along with strong respect for, professional expertise of the people involved in the plant. And that's a difficult balance to get. You don't want to get into an adversarial situation between, the public and the experts, but each of them is going to bring, really important points of view. The thing that I was left with as a question that I'm still pondering is the difference between an appointed wastewater commission, which is the recommendation of the report, and a wastewater advisory committee. It seems like, I get logistically, the difference is a commission is the sort of entity that goes to town meeting to create, which I think has advantages, just because it creates more focus on, what we're trying to do here. But it also points out that a wastewater advisory committee would be a lot quicker to create, because we can create advisory committees whenever we want. So between those two, I'm still not sure, but I agree that the other two options don't make sense for Acton. Yeah, so I had some detailed comments, but I agree, Dean, that the key thing now is, are we going generally in the right direction or not?
David?
So I think we should move forward with something here. I think, again, the devil's in the details. And I think with regard to whether it's an advisory committee in the end or an entity that has power in and of itself, depends on those details, right? For example, rate setting is a good thing, right? If rate setting stays with us and all the money matters stay with the board, then it's easier to say that they're just an advisory committee. If they control the money in some way, however, then I think they need a legal basis to exist. So what I might suggest that we do and move forward is to produce a list similar to their bulleted list, but with those things that the members of the board are concerned about. And then we, in a future meeting, we go through one by one and say, we'd like to retain that. No, they should own that completely, and whatever. And then once we resolve that, I think it'll be obvious what kind of entity we should create. The things that, where Alyssa used the phrase, quote, keep tabs on, quote, I completely agree with what you said, right? So all the things that she was bringing up that they should keep tabs on, how the new buffer tank is working, and all the things like that, I completely agree is in their domain. I think that whether we should expand the sewer district or not, I have my opinion as to who should own that, but I think that's any expansion of the district, and there are little expansions like just approving additional privilege on an existing lot, but that is already in the district, or is there's adding a lot that's adjacent to the district, or a wholesale expansion like sewer on Lower Great Road. Anyway, I'd be happy to produce a list if people trust me to do that of the things that I think board members are concerned about, and then we could come back, and then maybe it's obvious as to where we should move forward.
That seems like a pretty reasonable way to move to the next step. If, unless anybody has any particular objections to that, why don't we pursue that? Jim?
Well, in the spirit of sort of pre-filling David's list, I could mention a couple of specifics, if that would be okay.
Oh, okay, let's do that now in open session.
Okay, yeah. First was a concern that it seems like there's a chartered role for the select board to transmit a budget that includes borrowing and spending to FinCom. So I think we're inevitably on the hook for approving budgets, but getting a commission or a committee or whatever to wrestle with the details and make a recommendation to us is really helpful. But I think ultimately that belongs to us. What else? I think we're facing issues around both the little mini expansions and the waiving of privilege fees and the possibility of bigger expansions. We're looking at policy questions around, will the entire town take on the cost of some of the benefit? And that's clearly the sort of thing that is going to fall mainly in our court. But if there is a wastewater advisory committee or a commission, they could do some analysis that would help us. Like to say, oh, looks like right now, back of the envelope, and another expansion attempt in West Acton would cost, this many dollars per SBU. If it was entirely borne by ratepayers, and here's what it might cost if the town put money in. So that'd be helpful information that they could develop for us, but the policy stuff I think is inevitably with us.
Alyssa, and then we've got a question from the audience.
So I would just say here in open session that I agree for the most part with their bulleted list of what should stay with the select board and what should be the responsibility of the commission. And I just wanted to mention one other thing to keep tabs on, which I hope can happen if there's a commission that's independent and meeting more regularly, and that is addressing the long-term challenge that we've been discussing for years of expanding the discharge capacity to accommodate the parcels that are currently in the district, have paid their betterment fee, and are not yet hooked up. In addition to folks that are already connected but maybe want to add bedrooms. So I think that's another challenge that needs some addressing.
Thank you. John?
Thank you, John Peterson, 6 Jackson Drive. I'm reminded of the old saw, water everywhere. So earlier this evening, you talked about the RAC, the Water Resources Advisory Committee. Even as you're discussing sewers, the Acton Water District is meeting. And so one of the challenges that the sewer district faces, regardless of who is actually in charge, is how to coordinate with the other activities that touch on water. And to the email that I sent earlier this afternoon, it is a mistake to think that only people who are connected to the sewer benefit from the sewer, because the sewer serves as groundwater protection, which serves the entire town. So that's the case of a public good accruing to me that I don't pay for, and that's not a good circumstance. So I hope, 2 things. I hope, one, that you do go ahead and establish a commission, and then unlike the commentary around having the select board trying to go off and figure out what the scope of that commission would be, I would be much happier to see a couple of select board members, maybe a couple people from the RAC, maybe somebody from the water district, sit down, and then with whoever, might be interested in the sewer in the future, and come up with, I propose that you use RACI, but there are other tools that you can use to try and create the contours around roles and responsibilities for the sewer commissioners. Then let that group bring back to the select board, a proposal that would actually be actionable with regard to the nature of the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, time is marching on here, and we do have a couple of hearings we have to deal with. I'd like to wrap this discussion up. And again, it's going to be something that's going to get brought back, but I think personally, I feel that David's suggestion about coming up with a list of, whose bucket all of these issues are going to come into would be a good start. And then from there, we might be able to flesh it out a little bit more, but at least if we know we're kind of speaking in the same, along the same pattern, then I think it'll be much more successful. So I'm looking at David and I'm looking at John simultaneously, as hard as that might be to do. Do you think this would be something that could be ripe to be brought back at our meeting in August? It gives, month and a half, almost 2 months to come up with those lists.
That would work for me.
Okay. In that case, David, if you could move ahead with that list, that would be great. We'll ask the town manager and Tom to put a little teaser in our list of possible items for agenda discussion. I believe our August meeting that we have scheduled is right at the end of the month, so we'll try to plug that in, bring it back, and that way we'll have enough time going into the fall to be able to flesh this out and come up with a resolution. All right, thank you. So, public hearings. There's one proposed public hearing. There has been a continuance requested, but I will read the notice.
Point of query or something?
Yes.
Would we normally have resident concerns now and chair update?
I want to get these two hearings out of the way.
Great, thank you.
And then we'll jump right into the resident concerns, yes. They're time sensitive. The Acton Select Board will hold a public hearing on June 16th, 2025 at 7:10 p.m., continued from May 12th, 2025, in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204 at the Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, and virtually actonma.gov/meetings/SB on the application of Suburban Glass and Mirror for a site plan special permit number 3/19/2025 493 under zoning bylaw section 10.4 at 60 Powder Mill Road. The proposed project consists of redesigning and expanding the existing parking lot. Application materials and how to participate remotely are available online and at Acton Town Hall, https://doc.acton-ma.gov/ds-web/collection-19067. The applicant has requested a continuance to July 7th, 2025 at 7:10 p.m. And I have a signed agreement on the timed extension. I'll entertain a motion. David.
I move to continue the hearing on 60 Powder Mill Road to July 7th at 7:10 p.m. in this room.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to continue until July 7th. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Next hearing. The Acton Select Board will hold a public hearing on June 16th, 2025 at 7:15 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204 at Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, and virtually on the application of Acton Seafood Company located at 541 Massachusetts Avenue, Acton, Mass., under Chapter 140, Section 181 of the Massachusetts General Laws for an entertainment license for acoustic and vocal music. The application can be inspected at Town Hall during normal business hours. Login instructions for computers can be found here. For a computer, please click on the link to join the public meeting, actonma.gov/meeting/SB. From a telephone, dial 646-876-9923 and enter webinar number ID 503-918-785. Telephone users may dial *7 to request to speak after joining the meeting. Computer and app users may use the raise hand feature to request to speak. Is the applicant here? Please come forward.
How we doing?
Very well. Your name, sir?
Dan Galvin.
Can you give us a little description of what you have proposed?
Well, we are looking to just have acoustic solo, mostly solo acoustic artists come and play out on our deck for a couple hours on weekend nights, just entertain the clientele.
Thank you. And I think the operant word here is acoustic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Questions from my colleagues? Alyssa?
Thank you for coming in. I appreciate that you have suggested some early ending hours, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. That's great, very considerate. I'm wondering about the location of the speakers on the deck and which direction they will be facing, and just wondering if it's possible to not have them facing the residences that are directly across the street.
Yes, exactly. So what we plan on doing is our deck, and I'm sure you've seen it. Okay, so there's a corner in the front that's at the road. We're building a little platform so where it's projected towards the building, not towards the street. So if any sound will reflect to the back parking lot.
Other questions? David?
Sorry if I missed this in the application. How late in the year do you expect to be running these things?
Well, it's always going to be about weather and people sitting outside, because there's no sense in having it if they're not going to sit out there. And generally that runs May to like October latest. And it's always weather permitting. And of course, with the weekends as they've been going, we haven't been too successful of having weekends that weren't raining. So it's hit or miss.
Thank you.
Yep.
The questions from the audience? I will entertain a motion. David?
I move to close the public hearing.
Second?
Moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Another motion. David?
I move to approve the entertainment license for acoustic and vocal music for Acton Seafood Company, 541 Mass Ave.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion from the board? No. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. We look forward to it. All right. Now we'll jump back to item 4, resident concerns.
I'm Ann Chang. I'm speaking for the Board of Trustees because I want you to look at the Wild Garden, which is right out there, which is named for William Wild, who was the guy who gave the money to the library, the Memorial Library, and the memorial is for the Civil War soldiers. The garden was a cooperative effort between the library, the town conservation officer, and the Acton Garden Club. And we couldn't have done it without any of them. We need to recognize this cooperative effort and laud those involved. Chris Bushy, the teen librarian, Ian Bergman, the town conservation officer, and who wrote the original grant, and to the very receptive Acton Garden Club. Before the grant was written, there were meetings to discuss the scope of the project, who would do what work, and of course, the funding. Chris and I worked closely with Kathy Farkman and Barbara Wassell and mapped out the garden. Barbara, in fact, put out a design plan for the garden and chose the plants and directed the cleanup method. Barbara and Kathy were able to get 20 to 25% discounts on plant materials from the Native Plant Trust in Framingham, True Talk Natives, and in Rochester and Blue Stream Nurseries. The funding for the specialized plants came from the Acton Memorial Library's Planter Fund, which is one of the library's trust funds, so it didn't come from town coffers. Ian and Chris had help from the following planters, the people who did all the work. Janet Irons, Titus Cow, Dave Hazen, Jenny Holden, Asud Jagmar, Miriam Lezak, Olivia West, Sylvia Hopelden, as well as Barbara and Kathy. There was also initial help from the DPW crew in the preparation for the site, so it was a total cooperation.
1 minute.
Oh, okay. The Wild Garden is designed as a native pollinator garden. It will attract birds, butterflies, bees, and other species. This garden, aside from being beautiful, which it will be as it grows out, will become a site for future library and conservation commission programs. The trustees of the Acton Memorial Library are grateful to especially to the Acton Garden Club and all those others for their work and cooperation that made this garden possible.
Thank you. And thank you to all of the folks that have helped us with this. Yes, sir.
Scott Sullivan, 8 Patriots Road. Seeing on the agenda the Economic Development Strategic Plan for approval and having recent access to data, I ran the census data from the current year, and I found, which is on the handouts that's being passed around, that there's a material difference in the actual town data versus what's in the Strategic Economic Development Plan. And since the plan is, one of the foundations of the plan is the assumption on the population in the town, and granted it's not the entire assumption for the plan, I just wanted to bring to the board's attention that there is a material difference in the bands and the actual census data for currently. So running the data off of the current numbers, you would not get to the projections that they currently project. And in a stable interest rate environment and declining or stable interest rates, people tend to move, sell houses, change residencies. In rising rapid interest rates, people tend to not make decisions, and with a potential of future declines in interest rates and additional inventory at the MCI Concord facility where they're looking at affordable housing in multiple units, there could be areas for the seniors to have relocation opportunities where they currently don't have today in the upper bands. And the most likely scenario, in my own personal opinion, is that the data in the future will follow a bell standard deviation curve. If you look at the existing data, which is the graph I've presented to everybody, it follows a normal standard deviation curve, bell curve. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
No one online, Mr. Chair. Well, there are 6 people online, none with their hands raised.
Okay, thank you. In that case, we will move on to item 8, adopt the Economic Development Strategic Plans presented on June 3rd.
Thank you. So, meeting held at the 50 Audubon Recreation Center last week, where the consultants that were hired with the grant funding that we received from the state to do our economic development plan presented their findings. And members of the Economic Development Committee were there and a few interested residents. It was the follow-up meeting. There was also a workshop held earlier in the year, which had more people attending. But I think the final plan has been published online, and I believe it's in the packet. This is a document that'll be used for both the Economic Development Committee and perhaps the Select Board and staff in general as we look at planning efforts and goal setting and other initiatives that we want to work on. This plan will be the foundation for that going forward. So to give it the credibility that a plan like this needs to carry that type of weight, we'd ask that the board adopt it. Some of you were in attendance and have seen the report previously, so we didn't have Patricia, our Economic Development Director, come here tonight to make a presentation, but if you'd like that to happen, we can do that. If you have seen enough from the report, we'd ask that you consider voting to adopt it, not approve it or recommend it, but to adopt it as a plan for the town to work on. And this, of course, is one of the multiple plans that will be used as we, as a community, work towards our next comprehensive community plan. There are housing components of that. This is the economic development component. There's a climate action component. There's an open space and recreation plan component. All those studies that we work really hard to develop with community engagement will be brought forward as we do the next comprehensive community planning effort. So any questions, happy to do my best to answer them.
Thank you. Questions from board members? David?
Mr. Chair, can I ask Mr. Sullivan a question?
Certainly.
So if I may, yes, please, if I may, I understand what you said in terms of the statistics. Did you have a bottom line implication there? Are you saying that you think the housing turnover is going to be higher than what is predicted? Well, I think, first of all, what you said, if I got you correctly, is that there is not as much of a drop in the 20-somethings and 30-somethings as the report indicates. That's number one.
And the middle band, which I highlighted a group that I would assume would be parents, which are like the 30s to the late 50s, is understated dramatically. It's right now it's 53% of the town population, and they're projecting it at like 40% going forward. So in that, not to say that everybody in that band has children, but the likelihood is that if you're in this town and you're that age, you have children, and that the lowest band is overstated. And in fact, the senior band, if you're going off the current year's numbers, is understated. So I feel like the foundations that they're basing their assumptions on aren't in line with at least this one data point from the most recent year is indicating. And because of that, I feel like their assumption on housing turnover and people being not leaving town and staying in and being kind of, staying here. If you look at the bell curve on the age bands, when people get older, they leave the town and they're not necessarily staying here. And if interest rates go down and there's more availability local, so for people that want to stay in the Acton area, if MCI Concord puts, I don't know, a couple hundred units and you sell your Acton house and you downsize the Concord, you're still a half a mile away from Acton. So you can still have access to the people you want to have access to, and you can have more affordable housing. So I think there'll be more inventory in the short run. I think interest rates will be lower. And I think that will change the, in my mind, that would change the underlying assumptions. I think there's a lot of good material, don't get me wrong, in that plan. I think it was very well done. But since I recently had this data and I was coming to this meeting, I just happened to look at it before I came here tonight. And it just jumped off the page that the data is not providing the right trend analysis going forward.
Right, so you don't really object to the report. You're just highlighting some things that,
Yes.
where you differ in interpretation of the numbers, and
Well,
some of the numbers are off, you
Yeah,
think?
this is factual, and you could all do the same thing I did. And I just want to make sure the board's aware that if you're reading this, if you were to read this report, you would be misled by the projections of the town populations in the bands. And I'm saying factually, this is what it is. You can project off this, or you can assume there's some magical events that's going to put us back on the run rate that they're projecting. But I think that the most realistic thing to do would, like, you could take their assumptions on population growth, but I would start with the actual numbers this year and roll that forward and see what that looks like.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to mention that this very well put together analysis of the census data is certainly accurate based on the returns that we get at the town clerk's office for the annual census, but that is different. It's a different data source than the census data that was used in this report. So Mr. Sullivan's reporting 18,000 residents in 2024, which isn't accurate. There are more than 18,000 residents. That's just the number of people that responded to the town clerk's annual census. So while this data that Mr. Sullivan compiled is certainly analyzed in a very precise way, it's not the full population that the RKG study looked at, which is the census data, which shows us having 24,000 people in more than 20,000 people, certainly.
And just a simple question. If there's better census data, can I get it? Because apparently this is the only census data that is available. That
Right,
I was told.
so the US Census has volumes of data available on its website. So that's what the RKG study looked at. The census data that I believe that you used is the town clerk census data.
Yep.
Which is the best available, but it's based on returns. So if we send out 9,000, if we send out the census to 9,500 households and we get 8,200 back, then
How
we
many
only get
people are you
the,
saying in the town that you believe? How many people in the town do you think there are?
we believe there's closer to 24,000 people in town. So
Okay.
it's a significantly different number.
But it's unlikely to change the bell curve.
Well, maybe.
Because statistically, that is significantly a large sample size. It's more than a reasonable sample size. If I have 80% of the population and it shows a bell curve, you're going to end up with a bell curve. That's stats. That's how it works.
I'm not sure that I would agree with that, but I don't think it's necessary to get into that at this point.
Thank you. I will give one anecdote. I actually worked as a census enumerator during the 2000 census and chased people to the ends of the earth to try to get them to fill out their paperwork, which I know the town clerk is not prepared to do. Yeah, there certainly are lots of different numbers floating around. It depends upon how determined you are to get the last one, which, at least in 2000, the feds were really interested in that. I think this, I thank you, Mr. Sullivan, for bringing this forward to us. And what I'd like to see is if we adopt this plan, and certainly we can relay all of this information, I don't think there's anything that would prohibit the Economic Development Committee and Economic Development Director from looking at this and seeing if there's tweaks and changes that need to be made in some of the portions of the report. But I think, the report is voluminous and very well done. I think it runs, 75 or 80 pages. So I would. 140. And that's why I read it so quickly. So I would be interested in getting a motion to adopt the Economic Strategic Development Plan as presented, with the understanding that, like any document, as new information comes in, it has to be reconsidered.
I move that we adopt the Economic Development Strategic Plan as presented on June 3rd.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion from the board. Jim?
I was also reading it with an eye towards, the eventual next comprehensive community plan. And one thing I found really helpful was the the survey results embedded in each recommendation. So you could see some of the recommendations were, wholeheartedly accepted, and some were, a lot closer to 50-50. And that's going to make a difference when we get to the comprehensive community plan, especially in places where there may be places where the goals of the economic development plan don't necessarily fit with the goals of the other plan. And the comprehensive community plan process is going to need to resolve that by, seeking community input and having discussion. So, for example, there's a goal here about undertaking planning efforts to identify potential parcels or contiguous parcels that could contain 5 to 25 acres and work through members of the real estate community to investigate their availability for acquisition, development, suitability, and developer interest. And that's exactly the kind of thing that, other plans might say, oh no, that should be for affordable housing, or that should be for open space, or that should be for, agriculture. So I'm happy to vote to accept the plan with the understanding that, when it comes down to it, we're going to have to reconcile the places where the gears of this plan don't really mesh neatly with the gears of the rest of our plans.
Thank you.
I'll just have one comment, and these plans are like living documents, they're not, they move, so that's all.
Thank you. Got a motion on the floor. It's been seconded to adopt the Economic Development Strategic Plan as presented on June 3rd. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Item 9, approve FY26 short and long-term goals.
So these will be displayed on the screen momentarily. They were published in the packet, I think, over the weekend, and they are the goals that were voted on by the board at your workshop last week, with a few minor style changes. So we'd ask that the board adopt these as your goals for the year, if you agree with them.
Thank you. Comments?
I really like the whatever you just said, the editing. I do have a suggestion for our first short-term goal, however. It's my understanding that our HVAC and emergency power replacement project includes a lot of accessibility coming into compliance with ADA, and I'm wondering if this might benefit from some rebranding to be more inclusive of all of the elements that are involved in that project. I don't have a particular suggestion about potential wording, and I was hoping that maybe David might have a suggestion since he's on that working group.
David?
I would ask Mr. Bijan if there are ADA things in this part of the project, but I am not fully aware. There are ADA things in the town hall facility goals overall, but I'm not aware of any in this project. So maybe Mr. Bijan can comment.
Sure, thank you. There are some improvements that are required because when you improve a building beyond a certain value of the building, you have to make upgrades to anything that's lacking. And some of the, just for an instance, some of the railings coming up to this floor aren't at height that are acceptable for ADA, so that's one thing, for instance, that has to be changed. In terms of access to bathrooms, to office spaces, we're compliant to a degree, but there are some minor changes that have to happen. It's just costly because there's so many small things. So while there are ADA components to the project, the major focus is still the HVAC replacement and the emergency power replacement project.
Alyssa?
Thank you. I do remember reading about the railings, especially in the stairwell, and also I think countertops and signage with Braille on it. And I'm just wondering if there is significant enough percentage of the total project cost that it would be worthwhile adding in HVAC, accessibility, and emergency power replacement, just so that voters at town meeting will understand the scope of it.
I would say that any request, well, the anticipated request at town meeting could include all of those things. And the goal may or may not need to include it.
Okay, David?
I would not object to Alyssa's suggestion, however, if we want to add another clause there or phrase, that's fine to me.
Maybe just add at the end, and related Americans with Disabilities Act modifications. Thank you. Other questions from the board about any of the goals before we vote? Jim?
We're just voting on the short-term goals for now, right now?
Yeah, we can do the whole thing.
Okay, then let me talk about, I'd like to talk about the long-term goals for a little bit. So I guess I'm wondering what the appetite is of the board for reconsidering these goals. We noted near the end of our meeting that we missed two goals that were widely supported last time. Identify and implement services and programs that address housing insecurity, and diversify and expand the public transportation program. And I think that the problem was that, so we had a voting system where we each had 5 votes that we could put on any of the candidate goals in any amount. It created this side effect, which was that by the time we got to long-term goals, we figured out that any time any board member put 2 of their votes on any goal, it was going to become a long-term goal because of the way the numbers worked out. So we, and at least 2 of us, I didn't take a look at the actual numbers, but I could see them, and for myself and for others, did do that. And I think that caused, I think we were all, those of us who did that were hoping that, oh, well, those popular goals, they'll definitely get selected by other people. I'm going to, I have my pet goal that I really want to push over the finish line. And so we end up with long-term goals that to some extent look like each board member got to pick a long-term goal, which I don't think really results in the kind of well-thought-out plan that the staff and the town deserve. I mean, I have a couple of ideas about how to fix it, but I wondered if the chair would be willing to assess the willingness of board members to reconsider the process?
Well, we met for in excess of 3 hours and went over this, and I think the point that you raised was something that we actually discussed towards the end of the meeting. And I think people acknowledged it. I will also acknowledge that just because a long-term goal, this particular list for this year does not include those items, it doesn't mean that those other goals will not be considered. They're still out there. But I think it depends upon, what I don't want to see is having us end up with another half dozen goals under long-term goals. So somewhat similar to the discussion I had about, don't suggest any new hires until you figure out people you're going to get rid of. I would suggest we do the same thing with these. But I would certainly be interested to hear the comments from my colleagues about whether you want to reopen this or not. Alyssa.
Thank you. I'm glad that you raised this, Jim, because I spent a lot of time over the weekend, well, through the whole week and over the weekend, thinking about whether or not I was happy with this set of goals. And I have I'm proud to announce that I have made my peace with it. I will note that the year that you were chair, we had, how many votes? Can you just remember? 20 votes, something?
It was a ranked choice from 20
We
down
had
to
ranked choice
something.
voting, we
Yeah.
had many, many points. It was my first year on the board. I used several of my votes on one goal, and that was probably the only reason that it made it to through the final cut. And I will also note that when I was preparing over the weekend for this meeting, looking through the meeting packet, rereading the sewer governance report, and realizing I did not remember to put forth as a long-term goal to, continue on that. But then, going back to 2023, conduct a sewer commission analysis was on our short-term goal, and in 2024, it wasn't, but we still went through it, and now we're still talking about it. And now we've just assigned David to bring us back a bullet point, so that sort of adds to my piece with this list as is. And just happenstance, I went to an MMA, well, it was an MSA training on Friday, and learned about another goal-setting process in a different town that was much more lengthy and careful. So there were 2 workshops for the select board instead of just one. And the first workshop was compiling and presenting a list to the select board of goals that came from staff, department heads, and also rolled over goals from the past so they didn't get lost, because that's always been a concern of mine, is that, wait a second, if we come up with this great new idea and we suggest it and then through the vote it makes the cut, then what happens? I mean, we lost housing and transportation, which I think the community, when we get emails from individuals and committees, that's always at the top of the list for things that they want us to include in our goals. So I think that, maybe in the future, a future year, we could incorporate something like that. And then there's a second workshop where the select board brings back, like we do, individual submissions, and then it's voted on. I was pretty uncomfortable at our goal-setting meeting on Monday, being there, reading for the very first time in that moment the goals that all of you had submitted, and then having just a couple of hours to think about it. Like, I want to mull it over after I've, gone home and had a sleep and thought about it some more and talked to people. So I think that going forward, I'm okay with this year, not reconsidering this list, but considering beefing up our process next year and in the future.
David?
So I agree with Lisa that I don't have any desire to redo the process for this year. I do think it's reasonable for us today, if Jim wanted to formulate one more goal to add to the long-term list, that might be reasonable for transportation and housing. But if not, no, but if you do, I think that's a reasonable change. I do think, as far as the process goes, the minimum that we can do is to document the process that we used in the previous year, which we have not done. And we used to be a little bit more consistent with the process, but in the past 3 years, we've had different process each of the 3 years. I mean, not wholesale different, but slightly different. And so I think it's because we don't have it written down what we did the previous year, it's hard for us to assess what did we do well and what did we not do well. And so we need to do a better job with that.
Thank you. Fran?
You guys are going to love Porch Fest. Trust me.
Jim?
Thanks for the feedback. I'm happy to take this as a learning experience. I'm also, and not try to add another goal. I also take to heart what you said, Alyssa, which is that there's plenty of things that we're going to continue to work on that don't show up on the long-term goal list. I mean, it's clear, transportation's a clear priority. If it's missing there 1 year because we've got cool new things to talk about, we can live with that. So and with the notion of, actually writing down what we did, that would be great. I think that would be a forward-looking move. And I was really glad that you learned about additional goal-setting processes done elsewhere. When I think about, a comparison between the kind of care that goes into the goals of, like the economic development plan that we just approved, and the other plans, these goals are also just as important because they set staff in motion via the town manager to do a lot of things. So I think it does behoove us to have a well thought out and well documented process that results in goals that, we all have the sense, meet the needs of the community. So, I think we can just keep learning.
Thank you. All right, David.
Did we already make a motion?
No.
No, so I move to adopt the goals that were in the packet with the amendment that Alyssa made to the town hall goal for FY26.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to accept the published list of goals with, as edited. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay, approved, thank you. And Mr. Manager, I will chat with you and we'll try to find a way to memorialize our process from this year so that we can pass it off to the next chair for next year. Thank you. Item 10, approved transfer station rates. Oh, you're back, Ellie.
Ellie, the budget manager, is back, and Corey York, DPW director, is also here with us online. Thank you. For this next discussion of another enterprise that we operate here in the town of Acton.
Hello again. So as John said, we're here to review transfer station rates for the upcoming fiscal year. Okay. So just as a reminder, I was here last August with Karen Switzer-Neff, and we issued a recommendation to increase the fees for access stickers, but with the promise that we were going to come back the following year after we had reviewed bag fees and then also the bulky recycling program. Similar to the Sewer Enterprise Fund, we're kind of on a mission to try and standardize the rate setting process and create a system where we're looking at the financials and the rates that we assess on a regular basis. If approved, these rates would go into effect on July 1st with the plan to revisit rates again at this time next year. So looking at the operating budget, I will say this does not include capital outlay. So this is strictly just the cost to operate the transfer station. Between fiscal year 2025 and fiscal year 2026, there's an increase of about $78,000, which comes out to 11.54%. The driving factors behind this increase are salary costs. This does include the impact of the collective bargaining agreement approved at last year's special town meeting. Other salary changes, like we had discussed in the previous presentation, like part of my salary is now charged to this fund, as well as increased trash disposal costs. So those are the main factors that equal the almost $78,000. So looking at the recommended rates, at this time, we're not recommending any change to the access stickers. So if approved, these would stay the same as they were at the previous time that we reviewed them. So they are there for your reference and in the slides I printed out. We are, however, recommending increases to the pay-as-you-throw bags. So as shown, if approved, the 8-gallon bag would increase from 60 cents to 65 cents a bag. The 15-gallon would increase from $1.15 to $1.25 per bag. And then the 33-gallon pay-as-you-throw would go from $2.55 to $2.80 per bag. For the bulky items, the two changes that we're recommending at this time are 1, 2 at-home compost bins. I'll go into a little bit more detail about this on a later slide, as well as the mattresses. So if approved, the compost bins would go from $25 a piece to $50 a piece if you were to purchase it from the transfer station, and then mattresses would go from $20 to $22. So why these rates? The pay-as-you-throw bags and the fees that are collected from them are primarily intended to cover the cost of trash disposal, as well as support the overall operations of the transfer station, including capital investments. This increase, though incremental, does result in an estimated increase in revenue of about $12,000, which will support the pay-as-you-throw program, capital needs, and then operations overall, like I said. Regarding the bulky items, for the at-home compost bins, there was a rule set by Mass DEP that was related to our recycling dividends program that the town could not sell these bins for more than $25. This rule has since been lifted. Currently, we purchase these bins at a cost to the town at $65 a piece. So increasing it to $50 would allow us to better recoup that cost, but also still provide these bins at a discount. We did a little bit of a Google search, and it appears that to buy a comparable bin, you're usually going to pay around $100, a little bit more. So we'd still be offering these at a good discount. For the mattresses, we did a little bit of analysis, and we found that it costs the town between all cost factors about $22 to dispose of a mattress. So this increase would simply be bringing the fee that we're charging more in line with what our costs are. So that's all I have. I'm happy to take any questions. Like John said, Corey is online, so he can also assist if needed.
Thank you. Questions? Jim?
Sure. At last year's hearing, we started exploring the idea of having a combined, what I call senior or low-income rate. I was wondering, did that process continue? Have you been looking at it? Did it make sense or not to move in that direction?
So I think John or Corey could provide additional detail, but the capital article that was approved at this town meeting, the transfer station subsidy, is a direct response to that request, and also the citizens petitions that were previously passed at town meeting. So I think there's some program design that's going to have to be done to figure out the best way to move forward with that, but it is definitely front of mind.
Thank you. I was wondering if in the last few years we had ever looked again at the notion of being able to weigh the trash that was being disposed rather than using pay-as-you-throw bags. The reason that has come up over the years is because a few reasons. One is that it sort of, more accurately reflects the cost. Since we have to pay by the ton, why not charge by weight? And second, there are people for whom it sticks in the craw that, in an attempt to be environmentally minded, they have to keep using these plastic bags. And if they could use, any old bags they had lying around and they just, stuck them on some kind of electronic scale and had it charged to their account or, whatever made sense. So clearly that would be a big investment, but it would drastically reduce the cost for, you wouldn't have to buy pay-as-you-throw bags. And I was wondering if we'd ever re-looked at that in the last few years.
I'll defer to Corey for an answer.
Yeah, I know we looked at that years ago, but we haven't looked at it in the last couple of years.
Just seems like technology keeps marching on. It may be getting cheaper and cheaper to do something like that. So I think it might be worth, looking at some point. It may be easy to rule it in or out as a possibility with a quick look.
Alyssa?
Thanks again, Ellie. I have a couple of questions. I'm curious if we know what percentage stickers sold are for seniors, and I'm also curious why we are choosing to offer the compost bins at a discount. Is there some sort of expectation that's set by the state, or is it just that the town has decided that's a nice thing to do?
So for your first question, I do have those numbers in front of me. So for fiscal year 2025, and this is through the end of May, so it does not capture the entirety of the fiscal year, non-senior stickers, so total access for trash and recycling, we had sold 2,280 of them. And then seniors, same thing, all access, we sold 2,033. So the split between senior and non-senior is pretty close. And then for your second question, I would again defer to Corey.
Yeah, when we first started selling the compost bins, we were passing the cost through. So the cost that we were acquiring those through the state contract was what we were charging. And then, as Ellie said, through our programming with the DEP, where we show what we're doing, we can get credits and get money back to help offset other programs. They, for a while, had instituted a policy that you couldn't charge more than $25. So then we cut it down from, I think at the time we were charging $50 roughly what we were paying. We cut it down to 25. They've since lifted that requirement. So we were bringing it back to 50 with the idea that we still get some funds to the grant that we can offset that delta, kind of help promote composting different ways. And then because we also use those funds to help offset the food waste collection at the transfer station. So we were just kind of bringing it a little closer in line with the idea is we'll continue to evaluate those two initiatives. And if we have to in a future year, we'll bring it, we can bring it back to ad cost. But we thought for now, if we can just recoup a little bit more of the money we're putting into it, is kind of a good first step.
Alyssa?
I just have a follow-up on so this is about half, well, not quite half, of the stickers sold are at this senior discount. And I'm wondering if the town is in alignment with other communities. This seems like a very deep discount, and I'm wondering, are other communities similarly such a deep discount? Or steep, whatever.
I'd defer to Corey on that.
Yeah, I know in years back, we've looked at other communities. Every community is a little bit different. We were similar to several that I looked at. I can't say in recent years that I've done that reassessment to see where we fall. That's something we can look into just to see how we align. We've, in the past, worked closely with Littleton as they've developed their fees, and we've kind of balance check each other to see how each of us are doing and why our numbers are a little bit different. So that's something that we could evaluate further just to see how that program aligned with other programs, in the state.
So I would appreciate having a look at other communities to see if we're in alignment. I realize that in addition to that sticker fee, folks have to buy the bags, and depending on the size of bags you get, that can be pretty expensive. But it would be nice to know how we stack up against other towns in the area.
Jim?
My recollection is that the balances in the fund fell this year compared to previous years. And my what I recall about that is that we chose to make some, capital expenses, and that brings the balances down. Is that generally the way we're doing it, that we're sort of the operating funds tend to build up and then we get something expensive and they come back down? Or is this, like a problem that we have a low balance in the fund now, or what?
So you are correct. We did appropriate more from retained earnings to fund the fiscal 2026 budget than we probably have in years past. And the reason for that is we are planning on purchasing a front-end loader. So I think there's a couple of things going on with the retained earnings. On one hand, I think traditionally it has been used similarly to free cash, where we put this money aside, especially for these capitally intensive funds like this one in sewer, where we might need to have money on hand in order to make capital purchases. So that's one. On the other hand, the enterprise funds are reviewed annually by the Department of Revenue when we go to set our tax rate. And they advocate where if you do have sufficient funding in retained earnings, that you kind of lower your revenue estimates and appropriate from retained earnings to provide for the unknown in the upcoming fiscal year, especially when we're having town meeting before the current fiscal year is closed out. So this makes for a smoother tax rate setting process, where we're not getting in a situation where our tax rate's held up because of questions or concerns about the health of an enterprise fund. So I think those are the two main considerations when we're looking at appropriating retained earnings.
Unless there's any other questions, I'd be looking for a motion.
I move to approve the FY 2026 transfer station and recycling facility fee structure for the facility access stickers, PAYT bags, and bulky items as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any final thoughts? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine.
John?
I would request that the board consider taking item 13 now, which Corey York and a consultant are here to present.
Absolutely. Item 13, South Acton Village Complete Street Studies. Corey?
Hi, how you doing? As we bring up the consultant, Nicole, as you know, we've been looking at the Main Street corridor in South Acton, sort of between Central Street and High Street. So we've gone through a series of outreach and looking at ideas. We recently just did a sort of a final outreach of the plan, took in some public comment, and Nicole made some final edits to the report that was in your packet. So I'll hand it over to Nicole. She can go through. She has kind of a brief presentation, then we can take sort of your various questions on it.
Very good. Brief presentation. Thank you.
Can everyone see my screen here? Yep. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for making time on the agenda for us tonight to allow us to present our final South Acton Village Complete Streets plan here. My name is Nicole Rogers. I'm here on behalf of GPI. We're an engineering consultant firm out of Wilmington, Mass, where we partnered with Tool Design on this effort, and we've been working with Corey in the town to advance this project. So just quickly, we'll dive right into things here. I'm sure many of you are aware, but last year the town of Acton updated its zoning to comply with the Massachusetts MBTA Communities Law, which requires zoning for multifamily housing near public transit, specifically around the South Acton station. But in order to kind of truly foster a sense of place and support that future growth, the village really needs to be redesigned with pedestrians and bicyclists in mind. So to support these goals, the town has invested in the South Acton Village Complete Streets Plan, which essentially just offers design guidance to help improve the public right-of-way, prioritize safety and connectivity in the area. So the plan focuses on the Main Street Route 27 corridor from Central Street in the north to High Street in the south, shown in the red here. You'll also see that extends to some side streets like School, Central, and Maple Street to really help connect with some adjacent planning efforts and just ensure continuity. Within the study area, important to note that Main Street is mostly under the town's jurisdiction. However, the bridge over the MBTA tracks, which cuts through the village, is under Mass DOT jurisdiction, so that kind of limits what we can do in that section. South Acton Village, obviously home to the MBTA commuter rail station, and also connects to the Aspet River Rail Trail via Maple Street. Also want to note that it is part of the envisioned Aspet-Freeman Connector Trail. You can kind of see it in this dotted green line. That's a future link between the Aspet River and Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, which is currently in the really early planning stages with matched trails and neighboring communities. Businesses are mostly clustered along the western side of Main Street between Central and School, and the village sits within a historic district. So a lot happening here, and with most of the destinations located on the western side of Main Street, residents on the east side face real safety concerns when crossing, mostly due to traffic speeds and volumes. So the goal of the plan, improve the public right-of-way, really focusing on sidewalks, intersections, and bike connections. So we're not addressing private property or building facades. And just to reiterate, this is a planning level effort. So further design, survey, outreach, all of that will be needed before any implementation. Existing conditions, just quickly, what are we working with out there? A lot going on. Several intersections, particularly Main and Central Street, suffer from poor geometry. So this results in high speeds, limited visibility for both drivers and pedestrians. That problem is really compounded by speeding along Main Street, especially at the northern and southern entry points to the village, where the posted speed limit drops from 35 to 25. And oftentimes drivers, carry that speed into the village. There's also some outdated signal infrastructure at the Main and School Street intersection. That signal is currently stuck on a fixed time plan due to a malfunctioning controller, and vehicle detection is not working. So the system can't really adapt to the actual traffic conditions. Combined with the split phasing and poor geometry, this leads to some long queues that I'm sure you all know can extend back into some of the adjacent intersections, adding to the overall congestion and just undermining the village's walkability and accessibility. Sidewalks, I'm sure you're all aware, narrow and poor shape, oftentimes blocked by parked cars. Crosswalks are long and poorly placed. Bike facilities are inconsistent or missing, especially on Maple and School Street, which are key links to the MBTA and the Aspet River Rail Trail. And then parking, while there is enough parking, it is poorly signed and underutilized due to kind of unclear rules and just lack of visibility. So we've conducted several public outreach efforts. As far as outreach goes, we launched a public project website and survey promoted through the town channels. We hosted several pop-up events. We also heard from local business owners and the Transportation Advisory Committee. This past April, as Corey was just mentioning, we presented a draft plan at a public open house. There was general overall satisfaction with the plan, but based on some feedback, we did make some revisions to better balance parking and bike access, especially along Maple and Stowe Streets. There was also some important discussions about potential long-term improvements, kind of beyond the scope of the study, but critical to the future success of South Acton Village. So pulling all of these elements together, we've developed this area-wide conceptual plan here. Now, pretty hard to see at quite a large scale. So we're going to break this down into sections and start in the northwest sector here. So as vehicles approach the village from the north, we've introduced speed feedback signage along with flush medians to act as a gateway treatment. So this really helps calm traffic and signal to drivers that they're entering a more active pedestrian-focused area. But the star of the show here is definitely Main at Central Street intersection, which you can see has been reconfigured to more of a T-type intersection. So this is really going to help slow turning speeds, greatly improve your sight lines, and really reduce the pedestrian crossing distances. Moving along Central Street, the roadway is widened slightly to accommodate sidewalks and bike lanes. This intersection at the MBTA has also been realigned to eliminate the existing right turn slip lane. This change greatly reduces bicycle conflict points and also allows for a safer pedestrian crossing. You've also see that we've integrated the do not block intersection markings here. Also worth noting that we are not proposing a crosswalk across Central Street at the T station. We did evaluate that as a possibility, but due to the existing speeds and just the limited sight distance out there, it wasn't considered the safest option. Instead, a crosswalk is being proposed at the Prospect Street intersection just off the map here, and that will be implemented as part of the Central Street Complete Streets project, which this plan has been coordinated with. Continuing to our kind of north middle sector here, we're looking at the Main and Nylander Way intersection. You'll see that that's been reconfigured to create a more compact layout that once again slows turning speeds and improves visibility. Biggest thing here, the crosswalk, the mid-block crosswalk is located to the north side of the intersection, reducing the crossing from 3 lanes to 2, and it also moves one of the existing ramps out of a driveway area. This allows for an RFB to be installed here as well to enhance the driver awareness. We're also proposing new ADA compliant curb ramps and reconstructing sidewalks throughout the area with proper delineation to improve accessibility and prevent that vehicle encroachment from happening. In addition, we're proposing to kind of just formalize driveway access along the western side of Main Street, providing more clarity and kind of structure for all users. That being said, important to note that we are maintaining all of the existing driveways in response to requests from business owners to preserve their parking supply. And then moving to the middle area, this is really the core of the village area at Main and School. So here we've introduced tighter curb radii and realigned crosswalks that will greatly reduce those crossing distances and better match the pedestrian desire lines. The existing signal controller will be replaced to restore vehicle detection and allow optimized timing. You also see that we're adding a little bit of southbound left turn storage along with striping to help improve visibility over the bridge crest. You'll see that there are some pretty large curb ramps. Those will be there to support bicycle left turns, and a shared use path connection will extend along School Street to link to the upcoming River Street project. And then moving towards the south section, so in between Maple and High Street, our travel lanes are narrowed to slow speeds and create space for a northbound uphill bike lane that does not exist today, so great improvement there. ADA compliant curb ramps with tactile warning panels are proposed throughout, but specifically at the Erickson driveway. Tactile panels will help alert pedestrians to the extended driveway crossing while preserving that truck access. Once again, at the southern end, another flush median and speed feedback sign will kind of mirror that northern treatment. So this calms traffic, enhances visibility and safety at the High Street intersection. Moving to the eastern section, this is School Street. So School Street is reconfigured to narrow travel lanes and introduce a shared use path on the south side, replacing that informal on-street parking that exists today. The path narrows slightly near the Main Street Bridge to avoid any structural work, and those large ramps at Main Street will support the bicycle left turns. The original concept, for those who saw it, originally had the path on the northern side, but public feedback led to this revision to help us preserve some critical residential parking on the north side. You'll see that there's a little bump out there. That's to facilitate the multifamily housing, and it also better aligns with the River Street project, which will formalize one-way traffic and adds a contraflow bike lane with a median refuge island. Curb extensions will, calm traffic and shorten those crossing distances. And there's a relocated mid-block crossing with an RRFB to improve visibility and reinforce safe pedestrian behavior at this intersection. And lastly is the western section at Maple Street. So Maple Street is a key connection between the Aspet River Rail Trail and the MBTA station, but currently lacks any formal bicycle accommodations. There were some marked bike lanes there previously, but they were never reinstalled after there was a repaving. And even when they were present, there was a lot of illegal parking, which essentially forced eastbound cyclists into oncoming traffic. So several design options were explored here, including a two-way buffered bike lane on the southern side of Maple. But once again, great public feedback. They raised concerns over safety, that on-street residential parking loss, and the MBTA access, specifically the bike racks. Restricting eastbound bike travel was also considered but not recommended due to likely non-compliance and safety risks. So the final plan that you see here kind of balances all those needs in a kind of creative way here, but we have buffered bike lanes that'll be added in both directions from Main Street to about 10 Maple Street. West of 10 Maple Street, the westbound bike lane becomes a shared facility to preserve that access to the MBTA and the bike racks. The eastbound lane then shifts a little bit to be able to retain some of that on-street parking, and you'll see that there's the green back sharrows, which will help provide some turning guidance here. So to tie everything in together, the plan is, really designed to coordinate with several adjacent efforts like the Central Street Complete Streets project, the River Street project, and the project at 19 to 21 Maple Street, which will aim to reconfigure the Maple Street and Stowe Street intersection with curb extensions to improve safety. So as far as implementation goes, we did do a preliminary cost estimate that was developed on a street-by-street basis with intersections pulled out. The total construction cost for the full study area is estimated at approximately $6.15 million. So that said, it is recommended that the town tackle this in a phased approach and use some creative funding sources like Complete Streets, Mass Works, Housing Works, just to name a few. So while beyond the scope of the study, several long-term strategies were identified that could help strengthen South Acton Village. Parking, it is available but poorly signed, so improved wayfinding could certainly help visitors navigate and reinforce the village's identity. The Main Street and School Street intersection is really delayed by, obviously the signal controller, but also signal phasing that's caused by its offset layout. So a long-term fix may, involve converting Railroad Street to a one-way and creating a rear circulation loop behind those businesses to help ease congestion, which would certainly require private property coordination and therefore was kind of outside the scope of this study. Improving east-west bike connections, particularly across the Main Street Bridge, that remains a key priority. There are some structural constraints that will require Mass DOT coordination or consideration, and truly advancing that Assabet River, Bruce Freeman Rail Trail connection remains vital for this area, but also regional mobility. And then finally, some sidewalk gaps on Central, Maple, and Stowe Street that are kind of outside our project limits really do limit access to some of these key destinations. So filling these gaps will really enhance safety and connectivity for those walking or biking into the village. So as we wrap up here, we're finalizing this conceptual study. As a reminder, it is a conceptual plan, so additional funding will be required to move the project forward through design and ultimately into construction. That said, there are a few elements, particularly low-cost short-term improvements, such as the traffic controller and the video detection that the town may wish to advance sooner. These could help address some of those more immediate concerns while kind of setting the stage for these larger term improvements. So that said, that's all I have. So any questions, happy to take them.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Fran?
Thank you, Nicole. It's Nicole, right? Thank you so much. What a great presentation. And I don't have questions. I love the gradual T connection on Central and Main. I think that's awesome. Also, how creative is having both direction bike lane on Maple. I love that idea. And I'm also glad you mentioned 1921 Maple because that project is underway. They came to the Historical Commission last week and they're starting construction there. So it's exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Alyssa?
Thank you so much, Nicole. I really appreciate that you were able to maintain those residential spots on Maple and School Street. That will make people very happy. And I echo what Fran said about realigning intersections, shortening crosswalks, the medians. I love those. I think that's really going to improve pedestrian safety. I know that the businesses in that middle north section requested that their driveways be maintained. So this isn't really for you, but just for the board and staff. I think that potentially eliminating one of those driveways may open up additional parking spaces. And you did mention considering an improvement of circulation, perhaps with Railroad Street being one way, or perhaps just reconfiguring those driveways, maybe eliminating. I think it is definitely in need of improvement for circulation and even grading right there. So just wanted to note that potential change. I do have one question. In the list of costed projects, is there any prioritization that took place there? Is that reflected in our Complete Streets plan, or is that sort of just left up to the town?
Kind of left up to the town. There are definitely, I mean, a lot of these are in your Complete Streets prioritization plan. So Main at Central is pretty up there. I would also say Main at School, like the intersection, just the signal controller, that's more of like a lower cost in the grand scheme of things, a lower cost, short-term improvement that can make a lot of really great benefit in the area. Fixing the traffic and making that a little bit more predictable so that it is actually, identifying real-time traffic conditions and responding that way. So.
Yeah, and just to add, this project got initiated because one of the select board goals a few years ago was the Main and Central intersection, but because of how busy it is here with all the intersections and then the various projects that we have on all the side streets, we wanted to kind of conceptualize how they all would connect and would work. So now that in my thought process and the next steps, and the select board having a goal of Main and Central, and then on our townwide Complete Streets, Central Street came up as the top priority. Now that I have kind of an understanding of how we think we want to conceptualize South Acton Village, I was planning to focus on the Main and Central intersection and start looking at a 25% design, kind of getting that started. And then, as you know, we were able to get funding at town meeting to replace the signal controller. So we're working on a scope for the equipment, at least, to get that in there. So when we work on the main School Street, it's functioning, but we can also easily adapt that to whatever changes we make there as well.
Thank you. Jim.
Hi, this is a great plan, very exciting to see. A few particular questions. Corey, could you assure me that Nylander Way is a public way? Can we reconfigure it?
That's correct, yes.
Great, okay. The next one was maybe a question for Nicole. That proposed future connector to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, and I think what you show on your map is basically a rail next to trail. You're finding it, that's so good. It basically showed it as, as sort of like directly next to the tracks. I also have this recent map from MAPC, from the landline project, that shows that proposed connection instead going down River Street. So I just want to make sure these two efforts were somehow communicating or in touch with each other. Can you say anything about, River Street versus going right next to the rails, as far as the connector goes?
Yeah, definitely. So that's shown in the map here. This is from kind of like the high priority mass trails initiative, and that's like a whole, other study. So I took it from that, but I am aware Corey actually sent me some of the stuff. There is an ongoing, or they're to schedule at least a design charrette for this kind of connector trail that will kind of, be more of a green line and, have some offset connections. And River Street is one of those potential, alignments. So our kind of, tie-in using School Street and putting the shared use path on the south side and improving that intersection at School and River Street will be beneficial. Obviously, this isn't like super preliminary planning stages, so it's hard to tell exactly where those connections will be, but it will be super beneficial to the area once that kind of starts coming along.
Great. Yeah, it was exciting to hear the MBTA. What was his title? But he is working on rails, trails next to rails, and that if we could work that out, there is some nice funding possibilities there. So it was, whatever works out, it's all good.
Yeah.
And the last question, maybe for either one of you, I know we had that early experiment on Central Street with, what can you do with just striping to create some bike safety? And it was a little controversial at the time because there wasn't a real strong rollout or communication about what was going on, but it does end up with bike lanes that kind of appear and disappear as you go out Central Street. And how does that relate to the beginning part of Central Street that's part of the project area?
Yeah, so definitely those kind of bike lanes that go from side to side, it was beneficial, to have that uphill bike lane in certain, directions. But, Central Street is very windy. It does have some speeding issues, so it's not the safest option out there. Ideally, you would want a dedicated facility for your bikes or, a buffered facility on a roadway like Central Street that does have, quite a bit of traffic traveling on it and the speeds that it does. So we've actually been working with Corey. Like we mentioned, Central Street was #1 priority within the Complete Streets prioritization plan. So the town did go after a Complete Streets grant to kind of focus on Central Street, particularly from Martin to the MBTA station as like phase 1 of that rollout, which would put a shared use path on the southern side and a sidewalk on the northerly side. So providing that shared use path on the southerly side, you have, great access to the MBTA station there. The long-term whole Central Street corridor, that's kind of, to be developed. But this is kind of that main critical corridor where, a lot of people are using Central Street from Prospect Street to get to the T. So creating that crosswalk there and really integrating these two projects and these two initiatives together.
Thanks. Seems like a very solid plan. Thank you.
David?
Yeah, thank you for this really thoughtful plan that considers and balances all sorts of needs. Yeah, you did a great job here, and it's including the public feedback. I don't have any real questions, but I just wanted to say, as a matter of history, there was one point when the train station was designed was only going to be accessible from the north side of the tracks. And at that time, there was just a design for a bike bridge cantilevered off of the Main Street Bridge because the bike path had to end at the train station. It couldn't end across the tracks in the train station. So in order to get all the state funding for the bike trail, it had to end at the train station. So anyway, there was a consideration for a while of cantilevering a bike bridge off of the Main Street Bridge.
Hey, any questions? I think we had at least one person online that has hand raised. Online caller, I think it was Royce. If you'd care to speak up.
You'll have to unmute yourself, Royce. You're unmuted now, but we can't hear you. Are you speaking? Oh, maybe, I think he's having a problem with his microphone or something. Maybe you can take another person for a moment.
Yes, go ahead, Ann.
I have a question about number 3, School Street, which is supposed to be a coffee shop. And when we were looking at the plans, we were going to put parking along that street, and now you're putting a bike lane. So I didn't know whether you were going to have parking and a bike lane, or parking or a bike lane. So, I mean, that's what, when we looked at those plans, there was going to be on-street parking for the coffee shop or whatever the heck it's going to be at number 3 School Street. And it doesn't seem to be there any longer.
Yeah, this is conceptualizing the approach, and we've been working with Kristen Guichard in the planning department as they're looking at the options for that stretch. So there's going to be more coordination needed to kind of vet this out as plans advance down School Street, but trying to find a good cohesive way that connected bike traffic getting to the train station and down to River Street. At least this way it gives us a vision of how we hope, and then it's just a matter of how do we make all the pieces fit. So there's going to be more to come on that depending on how those properties come to be and how the road project goes. But at least they can kind of visualize what we're thinking, and then we can kind of see how that all fits together.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? Okay, I would be interested to see if we can get a motion.
Is there a drafted motion? Otherwise, I would move to accept the South Acton Village Complete Street Study.
Second?
Moved and seconded to accept the plan as submitted and described tonight. Other questions, comments from the board? Alyssa?
So it was my understanding, especially as it's written on as an agenda item, that this was a presentation, and especially given what Director York just said about this being conceptual and it will evolve and there's coordination, it depends on how things develop, individual parcels. I'm not comfortable accepting a plan because I feel like this is not a plan, it's a study. And there are proposed projects. I'm just surprised that we're moving to accept it.
David?
I did say study. I didn't say plan. I moved to accept the South Acton Complete Street Study.
Okay, so we're just receiving it?
Yes, and I kind of, to me, that means that we want to move forward with it, right? We do have to go through to get to 100% design on each of these things. I mean, the thing that Ms. Chang brought up is an excellent example of the balancing, right? Having the bike path on the other side makes it easier for parking in front of the potential new development there, but makes it harder to connect with the bike trail on River Street or the sidewalk on River Street, and potentially harder to connect with, getting bicycles down Maple Street. But, so it's, those trade-offs will continue to happen, I think.
Alyssa?
So I guess if we are accepting this study, then that gives staff the go-ahead to, say, do the 25% design advancement on Main and Central, et cetera?
I believe so.
All right.
No, they'll be back. And, we'll probably be going to town meeting to look for money. Okay. All in favor of accepting the South Acton Village Complete Street Study? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passed unanimously. Thank you, Corey and Nicole.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I'll jump back, try to get back on order here. Approve Acton Boxborough Regional School District request to place wayfinding signage on Hayward Road. John.
Thank you. This is a request that came in. They're doing some wayfinding work, and they identified that there was one that would be on Hayward Road, which is a town road, and we checked with planning, and I believe it's not an issue unless Corey, I think Corey checked to see if it was in the right-of-way. Corey, is he still here? Oh, we lost him. Are there any concerns about this? Sign being installed as proposed in the packet? And if not, we will say, okay.
I looked at the photos, and it appeared to me that the proposed sign was actually some distance outside the town right-of-way on district property. So it doesn't seem to me to be a major issue. Hayward Road, I believe, is only 40-foot wide right-of-way, and it's bounded on the school side by the stone wall that's at the back side of the sidewalk. Sidewalk, there's about 6 feet of road shoulder behind that, well infested with the poison ivy, and the stone wall, and it looks like this sign's going to be behind that, so I don't think it's an issue for us. Here we go. It appears their proposed sign location, it looks to me to be well outside the town right-of-way. That row of trees basically is right in front of the stone wall, which would be the back edge of the town right-of-way. So it looks like it's on their property. David.
Can I just ask you a question, Dean? The top one is to the upper parking lot. Is the bottom one the same intersection, just the other corner? Or is that other one down by the tennis courts? Because I was thinking the other one was down by the tennis courts, and if so, it could be Old Charter Road, in which case we may own it.
Actually, if it's down by the tennis courts, that's not Old Charter Road. The section of Charter Road that's still there actually is right at the, directly opposite Charter Road itself.
Okay.
So that's actually that is an access driveway that they've got that goes into their complex, but Charter Road is probably another 300 or 400 feet. It is actually at the corner by the privately owned daycare center.
It's kind of funny that each of us is saying, no, you own it, no. Could we approve it anyway? And if, that we don't have an objection? And I mean, a sign is not really, I mean, even if it was we had to reconfigure the sidewalk or something in the future, moving a sign is not a big deal.
It's, I would be inclined to approve it and tell the district to move ahead with it.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor of approving this request from the school district, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Item 12, discuss Acton Boxborough Regional School Committee school assessment. John?
We received correspondence from the chair about actions that the school committee took last week, and the board has the opportunity to call a town meeting if you wanted to have another vote, or just consent by not doing anything to what they did at the meeting. And the action taken was to change the assessment, reducing it based on what they had estimated. Initially, an estimated would be what they would be able to reduce the assessment by if state aid numbers came in what we had hoped. And now that state aid numbers are where they are, they were able to reduce it. So that's my understanding of why this is on the agenda. If there are any questions, we can dig into it further.
David?
Yes, so actually, it's an odd situation. Their budget goes up, but our assessment goes down. And assessment goes down because they promised that if they got this $150,000 back through one set of state aid, that they'd reduce the budget, and they're just following through on that. And they reduced the assessment, and they're just following through on that. But in addition, they are increasing the budget based on Chapter 70 aid that's anticipated on July 1st. Now that the budget is in conference committee, they're pretty darn sure that they're going to get it, because all the bodies, the governor, the House, and the Senate all agree that on the Chapter 70 aid, and so they're pretty darn sure they could get it, and they're able to have fewer position reductions this year using some of that money. So that the Chapter 70 aid was increased to $150 a student this year. So the budget's going up, which we could object to if we wanted to call a town meeting, but the assessment's going down, so why would we object?
Alyssa?
Would you like a motion?
I would.
I move to consent to the reduction in the assessment from the Acton Boxborough Regional School District.
Before that gets seconded, is there a suggested motion? Because I think the action that we would take here is to call a special town meeting. If we don't do anything, then nothing happens.
So they want to hear from us
Oh, you're right. Yes. Sorry.
because they would otherwise have to wait, and they can't wait because they need to post positions and fill them.
I second Alyssa's motion.
All right, we've got a motion if somebody wants to second it.
David did.
Okay, moved and seconded to accept the lower, consent to the lower assessment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Done. Item 14, approved notice of intent application by RH Adhesives for 279 High Street. John, do you want to speak on this? Would you like me to, or? Okay. So, RH Adhesives is a small manufacturing operation down on Old High Street in a historic building, and Community Preservation recommended and town meeting approved funding to support some of their operations to make the building, preserve the building from a historic point of view. Along the same lines, they have been working with Conservation Commission and Zoning Enforcement to get their site into compliance and eliminate some areas of non-compliance as far as stormwater and other issues in proximity to the wetlands. They've reached an agreement with the Conservation Commission initially they were going to build a trail, and now what they are proposing, and this was something that's been worked on, and actually the notice of intent was co-signed by Corey York, to build a rain garden to take some of the runoff water from Old High Street and infiltrate it into the ground. And the work is being done on a piece of town-owned property, basically the access to the blue and green trail. They've been working with a number of folks in conservation, including Ian Bergman, and has previously worked with the town engineer and with Corey to come up with a design. The full design is in a packet by Stamsky McNary, which was in your packet, describing it. And basically, and I don't envision any, considering that they're doing this in response to a request from the Conservation Commission, I don't expect there'll be any issue there. Where we are It's publicly owned land, and where we are the stewards of that, they felt it would be appropriate to get a letter of consent or a vote of consent from this board to allow them to do this work to improve this piece of town property at no cost to the town. So, anyone has any questions about this? Alyssa?
Thank you. I do recall that there was non-compliance, I think related to the groundwater protection zone where a trailer was located. Has that trailer been moved, or was that project the original project that resulted in the condition to grant the easement, and then it was amended, and now it's being amended again?
Basically correct. There are a number of issues. It's a historic property. There are a number of areas of non-compliance that they're working their way through, and I think this is hopefully the final piece to get them over the hump with the Conservation Commission.
Well, I'm always in support of a new rain garden.
Considering I've been speaking about it, I will move to approve the notice of intent application by RH Adhesives at 279 High Street on behalf of the Select Board.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? My motion,
Aye.
please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Item 15, approve appointment of Nina Pickering-Cook from Anderson and Kreiger as town council with a term to expire on June 30th, 2026. Folks probably recall that Select Board has appointing authority over 4 individuals: town manager, town clerk, town accountant, and town council. So we need to approve Nina's reappointment or take any other action. If anybody would like to make a motion? Alyssa?
I move to approve appointment of Nina Pickering-Cook from Anderson and Kreiger as town council with a term to expire on June 30th, 2026.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All in favor, say aye. David?
I just wanted to say that in the, there are certainly a lot of situations that come up where we need either town council herself or a specialty attorney, and I've been pretty satisfied myself with attorneys that I've dealt with in various situations. Sorry, I just thought I'd make the
Thank you.
comment.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Approved. Okay, item 16. I mentioned this briefly during our goal setting. I've been approached by folks from the Concord Select Board who wish to discuss issues of mutual interest regarding senior tax relief programs. They've done a couple of programs. They've rolled out a program on their own, which is one that we've been thinking about. And they wanted to have some regular contact to do, they've got a task force looking at the implementation of some of their senior tax relief. So they requested to see if we could get someone assigned to it, and I'm opening it up to see if anybody is interested in taking on this assignment. Jim.
I'm the liaison to the non-existent Tax Relief Committee, and I did take the opportunity to, get familiar with our current programs. So I'd be happy to take this on. I will say that, the people that do all the work are the staff. So I would hope that, somebody from the assessor's office would be involved in this communication because they know a lot more than I do.
Yeah, I think they wanted to have kind of a brief meeting just to sort of set the stage. So, we have anyone else interested in wrestling Jim for this assignment? Alyssa?
So I was actually going to volunteer for this because I have been interested in learning about Concord's residential tax exemption, and I proposed as one of our goals to create create a program with a subsidy similar to the child care subsidy for senior tax relief. But I'm really not interested in wrestling Jim out of this. You're handing it to me? Okay, are you sure? You don't feel that strongly about it? Okay, then I volunteer to do this.
Okay. Then as chair, I will so designate you as being the representative, and I will send an email out and include you on it so they know who to contact. Thank you. Jim will find something else for you.
We'll find some markers.
Yeah.
I've got some long-term goals for you.
Yep. 17, announce revisions to operating hours for Town Hall and Human Services and Senior Center buildings starting July 1. John?
Thank you for this opportunity. So I think I mentioned at the last meeting, and it's something that we've been discussing a lot lately, which is staffing and recruitment and retention. We're going through what I would almost call a crisis with staffing. I think we've, in the past, had issues with recruitment and retention in the fire department. And before that, it was Public Works. And I think in both instances, we made changes to the collective bargaining agreements that have made substantial improvements to both departments. And we're seeing the fruits of that right now. However, with non-union employees and the folks that work in this building and some of our other offices, we're seeing turnover in areas that are creating challenges for us as an organization. And we're at a point now where we've been working with staff, we've been talking to departments, we've been analyzing what other communities are doing, and I think there are a few areas that we can make improvements right away that will have an impact on recruitment and retention. So one of those is town hall hours. And by town hall hours, I'm also extending that to other municipal offices that operate at the same hours as we do, such as the Human Services Building and a few others. So over the last 5 years, we have seen significant changes to how the public uses our services. Remote and virtual services were introduced during the pandemic and have remained a primary option for many people in this community. We have technology that allows for meetings, permitting activities, payments, licensing, and other services to be conducted online pretty much any time of day. The current hours we have in Town Hall, we're open 42 and a half hours per week. And I think staff work a 40-hour work week, and we shift things around to make sure we can cover the full 42 and a half hours. People aren't really coming into the building as much as they used to. I think that we're very busy in the morning. And we track this. We have door counters, like many libraries do, that track in and outs. We have a lot of activities in the mornings, in the middle of the week, and then the rest of the week is pretty, appointment-based or sparse. The number of hours that staff are in the office throughout the week is not much of a factor in the provision of effective public services as it once was. And I think that's something that I wanted to kind of say. And I think there's a new way of business, this online and other things that we've been able to leverage, but our employees are doing both. They're working the full schedule like we used to 20 years ago, and they're available every second of the day on their phones, responding to emails, addressing issues, providing services, and so we're doing it all. We observed through exit interviews, engagement with staff, that there are other communities that are providing similar benefits, but have shorter work weeks, so it's something that we really feel is necessary. I think we talk about recruitment and retention, we talk about it's creating stress on our organization. We're having turnover, it's creating people having to do more Like when someone leaves, we have to find people to do their job. A lot of times it's Mary Ann. And so she's currently doing 3 jobs, and she's doing a great job with it. But seriously though, we spend resources onboarding staff, we spend resources training staff, and then there's a lot of work that goes into bringing someone into the organization. So one thing that we want to do is we want to adjust our scheduled hours to reflect this new way of working and allow our employees to maintain a reasonable work-life balance. We've looked at data, we've talked to departments, we've looked at other communities, we've looked at the needs of the residents, and we propose to change the town hall hours by reducing the afternoons by an hour, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and reducing the evening on Tuesdays by an hour and a half. We would still open the same time in the morning. The permitting office would still maintain its practice of being open even earlier than that to help its contractor clientele get to work and out the door sooner. And we would still stay open for extended hours during voter registration timelines and other times where the town clerk's office needs to have hours open longer. This change in town hall hours will not cost us anything. It will not impact services, and I think it's going to be a welcome change. It's part of something that several things that we're doing to improve recruitment and retention. The result would be changing folks that work a 40-hour work week to have them work a 36-hour work week. We're also looking at other things to our benefit package, such as increasing, getting people to accrue 3 weeks vacation faster. You used to have to wait 5 years. We'd like to change that to starting at 2 years, you get 3 weeks. We're also introducing a longevity program, which rewards employees with a one-time payment that stay here longer than 5 years. This is something that I think most of the union contracts have, but it hasn't been a program available to non-unions, so we're doing that going forward. So all these modest investments in our non-union employees outweigh the significant costs to the organization of having to continue to contend with turnover and difficulty in recruiting for key positions. We'll still be open 38+ hours a week, and then we will work with some of the other buildings, like the Human Services and Senior Center building. Those hours would stick the same, they would carry the same hours over there. Other buildings, like the Recreation building, have a little bit different hours because of the program that they offer. The libraries will have different hours because of the programming that they offer. And any changes to service hours will be discussed with the trustees. But the full-time work week will change from 40 to 36. So we're investing in our employees by finding ways to keep them with the same salary, but reduce their weekly work schedule hours, and recognizing the fact that they're working tirely for us around the clock. So that's a long way of saying that the hours will change starting in the first week of July. I'm certain that the public will not be impacted by this, but if they are, we'll address it and look at ways that we may need to revise this further. And I appreciate your input and the feedback you've given us to date, and I would welcome any additional ideas that you have for us to consider as we look at other ways to improve recruitment and retention in our organization.
Comments? David?
Just a quick question, and not a prompt for anything, just a question. You decided to leave the opening time at 8 o'clock rather than 8:30 or something because of that increased customer traffic in the morning?
Yeah, we've had several conversations with different departments, and traffic flow varies from department to department, but overall, there's an overwhelming difference that we saw the first half hour of the day would get more use from the public than the last half hour. So that's why we shifted it to keep it at 8 a.m. instead of starting at 8:30.
Thanks.
Alicia?
I have a question similar to David's. I remember that the Friday workday was reduced in order to provide that evening on Tuesday. And I know that you said you have counters to track how many people are coming in. So people are not really taking advantage of that evening that town hall is open to come in after work if they're, say, commuting home around 6 o'clock. So this isn't really going to impact people's ability to get services if we switch over on Tuesday to closing at 6?
Yeah, we really, I think, when it first started, which I think was 2000 and maybe early 2018, 19, we saw it being used. I think that was a welcome benefit to the community to be able to come here at 6:30 and interact with staff. But since that time, and particularly since things changed a lot in 2020, it's really slowed down. I think we'll occasionally have someone coming in that wants to get married in the clerk's office, but those are often by appointment. People that are coming to do business in the permanent counters, whether it's contractors or homeowners that are curious, they haven't really utilized those later hours. And if they have, it's been by appointment, and we would maintain that opportunity. If someone says, I can't get there till 6, we say, okay, well, we can meet you at 6. I mean, I can't get till 6:30. We said, okay, we'll meet you at 6:30, I think. And we do that anyways. So the most traffic that would come to the building would be for the Tuesday night meetings. The town hall has a lot of meetings in it on Tuesday nights, and so there would be traffic, but I think a lot of it would be for that anyways.
I just want to follow up to say that I think we talk a lot about how our Acton community is a global community, people living here from all over the world, and folks that have moved here from Europe would completely understand and applaud us for this move towards better work-life balance.
Fran?
I was even going to suggest cutting the Tuesday hours back even more. I don't know if that fits into the overall numbers. Also, how does this apply to staff that support committee meetings? Because I always hate to go home and then have to go back out again, as a rule, but.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. We thought a lot about that. We think that even though the later Tuesday didn't get used as much as we thought it would, we think that people have become accustomed to that. And they've also been accustomed to the hours on Fridays. And so we felt like we were in a good spot to leave it the way it was, or the way it is, relatively, and reduce to 6 p.m. We don't think it would have an impact. In terms of the question you had afterwards, which was...
About staff
Oh, yeah,
supporting
they do that anyways. So right now, they would be here from 8 to 7:30, and then the meeting would go till 9:30, and that's how long they'd be here. Or a night like this, we'd be here till whenever. So I think that'll continue, and we'll do our best. I think the select board started a practice potentially of meeting at 6 p.m. with the eye towards having things wrap up sooner. I think other committees may follow suit and look to, where available, schedule meetings during business hours so that it doesn't have the same impact on staff. But to some degree, this is what we have signed up for. It's the line of work that we're in, but any improvements that committee members are willing to make to that effort, we would surely appreciate.
Thank you.
Jim?
Just my thanks for the careful way you've thought this through. This makes sense to me, and I hope that it helps with the, retention and recruitment crisis we're in. And I think it will.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve or confirm? Yep, support? Jim?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think this stuff is entirely within the purview of the town manager, as the way he works with his staff, but I'm happy to have a vote of support for this change. I would move that we support these changes.
Okay, got a second? Second. Moved and seconded. Comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay. Item 18, appoint Nathan Ryan as alternate representative for Acton for the Boston Regional Metropolitan Planning Organization. He works in our, those of you who haven't met him, he works in our planning department. We've got an issue with lack of availability for some of the other planners. Well, I will move to appoint Nathan Ryan as alternate representative for Acton at the Boston Regional Metropolitan Planning Organization.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Item 19, approve a 3-month extension for the Memorandum of Understanding with ActonTV with the same terms as the expiring agreement. So it's a 10-year agreement, which work should have begun to renegotiate it or look at it. That didn't happen. It came to our attention within the last week, and the existing contract expires at the end of the month. We don't have time to discuss or to do anything on it if we want to keep ActonTV operational. Would anybody like to make a motion along those lines? Oh, John.
Sorry, I just wanted to take a moment to recognize that the funding for ActonTV comes entirely, well, other than their own fundraising that they do. Majority of the funding for ActonTV comes from the town of Acton through the fees that the revenue that we get from the cable access agreements that we have with the major cable providers. So for people that are wondering what this is about, that's why we have an agreement with them, is because the agreement is to provide them with the funding and they provide the services. And I was hoping that we could have a discussion with the board, and if you have a desire to include the Communications Advisory Committee, which I can't remember whether or not they were involved in this in the past, that would be fine too, but 10 years, the next 10 years is a lot different than the last 20 years, which these two agreements focused on. So thanks for putting this on at the last minute, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I think some of the discussions I've had with folks over there is decreasing revenue because people aren't using the Verizon and Comcast as they have been in the past. So, and that seems to be pretty much a nationwide problem. So hopefully in the next couple of months, we can get a new agreement, understand exactly what they're looking for. Who's our representative to cable TV? Fran, busy summer.
I will check in with them, yeah. Are you thinking just to overlook, looking over the MOU and what their involvement is?
Yeah, I would think so. And some of those folks might be more attuned to, exactly how bleak the revenue projections might be, so know exactly what the implications are. And because I believe Mike Gowing is the head of ActonTV, so. Great. Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, so as you said, people are switching to direct internet, and even if you get that from the same provider, it doesn't provide revenue into ActonTV. So the related challenge is the contract with Verizon and whoever the other provider is, Comcast. Thank you, of course. To beef up the revenue if we really want to keep ActonTV doing what it's doing now. But I totally agree that starting with just, taking the current contract and extending it for 3 months is a good start, but we're really we're really in a hard place with the future of Acton TV.
Hey, would anyone care to make a motion? David?
I move to approve a 3-month extension to the MOU with Acton TV, keeping the same terms and agreements during this period.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay,
Mr. Chair, do you want one more motion?
I believe so. I think we've beaten this one to death.
I move to adjourn.
Second?
Second, okay.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? We're done. Thank you.